Chapter 2008. A huge aura shrouded the arena. Obviously, for the transcendents who had reached the limit of this world, Lone Cloud, who had this aura, was already in their sights. The transcendents who knew about the existence of the tier of God couldn't help but feel lucky that they didn't suffer a loss. Although the price of the tier of God was high, it was worth it compared to the effect of 3 bottles of tier of God. Even if they knew that they were tricked by Master Rainbow Pansy in this deal. The transcendents who didn't know about the existence of the tier of God couldn't help but be shocked that such a terrifying figure was hiding on that small peninsula. It seemed that they had to pay more attention to the unknown Jia Yen Mountain in the future. Although Nangong Do's swordsmanship was good, and his fusion of Taoist techniques and warrior chi was unique, his strength was just so, and he didn't attract the attention of the transcendents of the major forces. The battle between the Prince of the Underwater City and Nangong Do was just an appetizer. Now, the battle between 100 Tribulation Taoist and Lone Cloud was just the beginning. This time, they could finally see the strength of 100 Tribulation, the leader of the Kelowna Taoist sect, who was unfathomable. This old Taoist doesn't have any frightening strength. This old man's waist and legs are sore every day, and I don't have many good days left. 100 Tribulation Taoist shook his head on the arena and looked at Lone Cloud with a smile. Fellow Taoist Lone Cloud, I haven't seen you for 100 years, and your spiritual power has become so profound. Congratulations. There's nothing to be happy about. Lone Cloud said indifferently. If we can't gain a foothold in this conference, I'm afraid Jia Yen Mountain won't be able to survive in the future. You're wrong, fellow Taoist Lone Cloud. Now that the spiritual chi is flourishing, it's a great era. The Jialua Mountain is also a blessed place. Since ancient times, the spiritual chi has been abundant. How can it be hard to survive? You know, Lone Cloud said coldly. No matter how flourishing it is, the sky is still so high and the land is still so wide. There's no water without roots, and there's no spirit chi that comes out of nowhere. It will be used up one day and you'll have to fight for it again. Fellow Taoist, I'm impressed. The 100 Tribulations Taoist nodded. In that case, please. Bai Jia, you haven't taken the final step, and neither have I. At this moment Taoist Lone Cloud directly spread out his hands, and a huge amount of Dharma power began to flow around him. There is no need for us to test each other. I have a magical power here. If you can break it, then I lose. Please. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations nodded, but his expression was still serious. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky above the martial arts practice platform. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Taoist Solitary Cloud's entire body floated in the air, and his hands grabbed the thunderbolts that struck down from the dark clouds in the sky. The Jialua mountain lineage mainly cultivated thunder arts, but Taoist Solitary Cloud's thunder arts were like the light of a firefly compared to Nangong Do's. Taoist Lone Cloud waved his hand, and dozens of thick thunderbolts instantly turned into a thunder prison, trapping Taoist Master 100 Tribulations. In the thunder prison, thunder and lightning were crazily striking everywhere. There were so many thunderbolts that the entire thunder prison was like a huge ball of light, and it was impossible to see what was going on inside. Thunder pool hell. In an instant 3,600 thunderbolts flashed. Controlling the thunder prison, Taoist Lone Cloud said in a low voice, "This is the highest thunder art of Jialua Mountain. I've integrated everything I've learned into it. 100 Tribulations, this is our Jialua Mountains." At this moment, the head of the hermits of Jialua Mountain suddenly widened his eyes. The thunder pool hell on the martial arts practice platform was instantly torn in half by 2 huge spiritual energy hands. Inside the thunder prison, 100 Tribulations Taoist Master walked out slowly with his hands covering his ears. Thunder and lightning wrapped around 100 Tribulations Taoist Master, and in the end, it flowed into the ground like a flood. This thunder is too loud. Even my ears are hard of hearing. Fellow Taoist Lone Cloud, what did you just say? My ears are not good, and I didn't hear it clearly. Can you say it again? For a moment, Taoist Lone Cloud, who was controlling the thunder with both hands, trembled his eyes. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. In the stands, the hermits of Jialoa Mountain all stood up with disbelief on their faces. This time, when a solitary cloud went on stage, he was already going all out. Before going on stage, a solitary cloud had already drunk 3 bottles of God's tear, pushing his strength to the peak. He didn't want to end up like the legendary ABA, who didn't even have time to take the medicine, or like Nangong Do, who took the medicine but didn't have enough. Taoist Lone Cloud's strategy was simple. He wanted to get 3 pearls for Jialoa Mountain before the effects of the god's tears wore off. He wanted to use the increased power as a deterrent. And 100 Tribulations Taoist Master was the face of Kelowna Taoist sect, which was the source of deterrence for Jialoa Mountain. After defeating 100 Tribulations Taoist Master, Lone Cloud would challenge Kelowna Taoist Master's painting of fire clouds and win. Well, that was what they thought. Things should go smoothly. After all, after drinking 3 bottles of God's tears, one's power would increase by 27 times. Did 100 Tribulations by the God's tears as well? Instantly, this thought appeared in the minds of many people who had the God's tears. They couldn't help but feel anxious again. How many bottles of God's tears did this evil legendary female demon sell? Was she in the wholesale business? At this moment, Taoist Lone Cloud gritted his teeth. The lightning bolts in the sky increased again, and the terrifying lightning bolts gathered in his hands again. At the same time, 2 thunder hell appeared around 100 Tribulations Taoist Master again, but this time there were 2. Just as the 2 thunder pool hells were about to swallow Taoist priest 100 Tribulations, 2 huge palms of spirit energy appeared out of thin air behind him. The palms of spiritual energy grabbed the 2 thunder hell and tightened their grip. Lightning bolts flashed, and the 2 thunder hell were crushed by the palms of spiritual energy. Seeing this, Taoist Lone Cloud's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and roared. Then, he raised his left hand, and the lightning bolts in the sky gathered in his left palm. Holding thousands of lightning bolts, Taoist Lone Cloud jumped up and pressed down the lightning ball in his hand. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master raised his long eyebrows. When the lightning bolts pressed down, the stone floor of the martial arts arena was shattered by the lightning bolt. The terrifying lightning bolts scattered in all directions and went straight to the spectators' stands. Seeing this, Kelowna's Shinryu snorted and waved his hand. A golden wall of spiritual energy appeared directly above the spectator stands in the media area, blocking the lightning bolt. As for the other 7 spectator stands, well, Kelowna's Shinryu didn't make a move. At this moment, all the masters had to make a move. Some were calm, some were serious, and some were gritting their teeth. Taoist Lone Cloud's lightning bolts seemed to be easily crushed by 100 Tribulations Taoist Master, but the power was not a joke. The violent lightning continued for more than 10 breaths before stopping. When the lightning disappeared, a terrifying crater had already appeared on the entire martial arts stage. The crater was so deep that it reached the edge of the martial arts stage. It was frighteningly deep. However, 100 Tribulations Taoist Lone Cloud and Taoist 100 Tribulations Taoist Master were not in the hole. They had disappeared. Look, Lone Cloud is over there, outside the arena. Looking towards the source of the sound, he saw that Galyong Mountain's Taoist solitary cloud had already flown out of the arena. His entire body was pressed into the ground, and there was a huge palm print around him. He didn't move, probably because he had temporarily lost consciousness. At this moment, 100 Tribulations Taoist Master's figure finally appeared in everyone's sight. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master was floating lightly above the arena. He had his hands behind his back hunched, and his expression was kind. Kunlun wins this round. As the referee of the competition, Kelowna's Shinryu announced loudly. Then she waved her hand, and the last bead of Mount Jia Yen flew out from the hands of one of the hermits. Seeing that the last bead was about to be taken away, the hermit roared angrily and actually reached out to grab the bead tightly. Are the people of Mount Jia Yen all so shameless? Shinryu, who was already in a bad mood, said coldly, Can you people be any more shameless? This competition was broadcasted to the world, and Kelowna's merciless rebuke and the behavior of the hermit from Mount Jia Yen were all seen by the world, especially Kelowna Shinryu's rebuke, which was a personal attack. The hermit who held the bead tightly spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale, but the bead still flew out and shot towards Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master. Long Shirua said impatiently, Don't fix the arena, let's just fight like this. How long do we have to fix it every round? Next, Kelowna Shinryu went back to her seat. Kelowna thought she would sit down, but for some reason, Shinryu walked into the tunnel leading to the stands. Lord Long, where are you going? Fire Cloud Evil God asked hurriedly. Why did this guy run out again after sitting for a short while? Is he so busy? Can't I go to the bathroom? Do you want me to go with you? Take care. Then, under everyone's gaze, a hermit from Mount Jia Yen quietly dug out Taoist Lone Cloud, who was beside the arena, and brought him back to their seats. Nangong Do was still unconscious, and Taoist Lone Cloud was also unconscious. The remaining hermits of Mount Jia Yen lost their backbone, and their morale fell to the bottom. However, they didn't choose to leave at this time. The rules of the competition were that as long as there were still challengers, the competition wouldn't end. Maybe they still had a chance. This time, Taoist Lone Cloud bought 5 bottles of Tears of God. Now there was only 1 bottle left. Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master had also returned to the seats of the Tao Association. A few Taoist elders stood up at the same time to welcome him. However, Song Haoran wasn't here. Even Princess Chu Yang had left her seat at some point in time. The mysterious young man surnamed Lu from the Cheonghua faction also opened his eyes. After taking a deep look at Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master, he closed his eyes and continued to meditate. President, thank you for your hard work. This battle has broken the morale of Mount Jia Yen. Kelowna is the Orthodox Tao Association, and I think these overseas cultivators won't dare to say they are the Orthodox Tao Association anymore. Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master shook his head slightly and sat down slowly while massaging his shoulders. If more monsters like Taoist Lone Cloud come, I'm afraid my old bones will break. Everyone was surprised, and they didn't know why President Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master suddenly said that. Maybe he was being modest. However, Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master didn't say anything more. He just said indifferently, Kunlun, 1 bead is enough. The rest of you will have to work harder to let this old man take a breather. Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master originally had 1 bead, but he said so, which meant that the bead he originally had belonged to the Tao Association, not Kunlun. Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master obviously knew what the old Fire Cloud Evil God was scheming, and he was good at it. Everyone knew that, so they didn't say anything. At this time, Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master returned victorious, and the Tao Association of Kelowna was full of vigor. One of the Tao Association's Taoist master, Shinryu Taoist master returned son, held the 7-star sword, stepped on the wind, and stood in the air above the stage that had become a deep pit. You will be the one. Please come up to the stage and accept the challenge. Taoist returned son pointed his sword at a handsome man who was wearing a yin-yang Taoist robe and holding a jade token. He was a yin-yang master from an overseas island with a history of thousands of years. That guy returned son. Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master suddenly sighed and shook his head. But at this time, the voice of the mysterious young man from the Cheonghua sect suddenly rang in Hundred Tribulations' Taoist master's ears. Hundred Tribulations, You just said that solitary cloud of Mount Jialuo is only a monster with strength. What do you mean? Can't Martial Uncle Lu see it? 100 Tribulations, Taoist master replied in his mind. The mysterious young man said indifferently, there is a faint layer of blue light on Lone Cloud's body, which prevents me from using my divine sense to scan him. Since you have fought with him, you should be aware of this. It's nothing. 100 Tribulations, Taoist master laughed and said, a monster with strength is just a monster with strength. But as the saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. Even if it's just a monster with strength, once there are enough of them, they can beat the master to death. Don't you think so, Martial Uncle Lu? The mysterious young man thought for a while and suddenly said, if I challenge Shinryu Taoist master, what are my chances of winning? 100 Tribulations, Taoist master slowly raised a finger at this time. The mysterious young man frowned. Only 10%? 100 Tribulations, Taoist master said, Martial Uncle, did you block your brain or the heavenly tribulation make you stupid? I don't mean I have no chance at all, okay? It's just a tribulation, why are you so arrogant? You talk as if no one has passed the tribulation. 100 Tribulations, you humph. The mysterious young man snorted, I don't want to argue with a junior. The mysterious young man didn't say anything this time. At the same time, the yin-yang master who was challenged by Immortal Return Sun also slowly got up and left his seat. This handsome yin-yang master summoned a snow-white demon fox and sat directly on the demon fox's body, while the demon fox walked on air. In the corridor of the Qian grandstand. Master, why did you call me here in such a hurry? Is there anything urgent? Mo Xiaofei asked quickly at this time. Here. At this time, Kelowna's Shinryu directly grabbed Mo Xiaofei's hand and stuffed a bottle into it. What's this? Don't ask. Kelowna's Shinryu directly said at this time. Later, you'll pretend to be from the Greedy Wolf clan and fight on the stage. I'll tell you who you want to fight later. But before that, you'd better drink the thing inside. Okay, since Master asked, I'll fight on the stage. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. But this bottle, what's inside? It's used to nourish the kidney. Kelowna's Shinryu directly said, vigorous pill. I don't believe that this Shinryu's version of blood essence concentrate can't be compared to that rubbish, tear of God. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 2009. In order to make it easier to walk, a temporary tunnel was dug between the stands, although he didn't know what it meant. To make it more convenient to move from one spectator's stand to another without being seen by others, and so on, Mo Xiaofei returned to the stand where the Greedy Wolf tribe was with doubts, holding the so-called strength pill given to him by Kelowna Shinryu. But what was in the bottle was clearly golden and sticky. It was like gold paint. Wouldn't he have diarrhea if he drank it? Brother, you're back. When Mo Xiaofei appeared, Zhuifeng was always the first to react. It was just that the Greedy Wolf tribe, including Zixing, were staring at the stage at this time. What the hell? At this time, Mo Xiaofei also subconsciously looked at the stage. He remembered that when he was looking for his master, it happened that Taoist Lone Cloud was defeated by Taoist by Jia of Taoism. After a while, another senior of Taoism came to challenge him. It didn't take long for him to come back from the Qian stand. However, at this time, on the martial arts practice field, Taoist Master Huan Yang of Taoism had fallen outside the martial arts practice field. His face was pale as if he had been seriously injured, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Immortal Huan Yang lost. Zixing solemnly responded to Mo Xiaofei's doubts at this time, in less than 3 moves. 3 moves? Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but open his mouth, his face full of disbelief. Kelowna Shinryu, as the referee, said directly at this time in a flat voice, Yin-Yang Master Qing Ming wins this round. Many people had not even figured out how Immortal Huanyang had lost the battle. This senior of Taoist sect stepped on the 7 stars sword and formed a powerful 7 stars sword formation, which was full of various Taoist magic arts of the 5 elements. Seeing that the Yin-Yang master was trapped in the sword formation and had no way out, suddenly, the 7 stars sword formation controlled by immortal Huan Yang seemed to collapse. Soon after, Taoist Master Returned Sun violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and then his body directly fell out of the arena. Until now, the Onmyoji was still sitting on the white fox that he had summoned, not moving at all. In this way, including the 2 pearls he obtained in the competition, this devilishly handsome Yin-Yang master now had 3 full pearls. However, for this conference, Japan also split up its own delegation, and it was unified. Everyone represented their region in their own name. However, most of these individuals were severely injured in the previous round of direct competition. Not to mention the challenge round, there were only a few who could stand up now. Pure numbers were meaningless against top-notch transcendent. The essence of the Power Conference was gradually revealed as well. It was a competition of the number of top-level transcendents, and the beads that represented the council would eventually fall into the hands of those top-level transcendents. Guild leader, I'm sorry. I lost. After Sage Huan Yang returned to the Tao Association's side, his face was pale. Although he wasn't flustered and exasperated, it was obvious that he was unwilling to accept the result. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations was thinking about something at this moment, and he didn't say anything. Another Tao sect elder frowned and said, "Return to Sun, your 7 stars array formation has both offense and defense. It's something you've been playing with for hundreds of years. Why did the array collapse just like that?" Sage Huan Yang frowned and recalled at this moment, "I suspect that this Yin-Yang master has the means to directly attack one's divine sense. On the martial arts stage, I only felt that my spirit was suddenly severely injured, and my divine sense was like being hit by countless sledgehammers. In an instant, my consciousness was emptied, and then the formation collapsed. Fellow Taoists, this Yin-Yang master's means are evil, you must be careful. If it's a means to attack divine sense, then let me do it." A Taoist elder said in a deep voice, "Huan Yang's failure is not a fault, but a sinister means. Since ancient times, our sect has kept a secret treasure specially used to protect divine sense. It's just right to deal with it." However, Taoist Master 100 Tribulations said indifferently at this moment, "Fellow Taoists, the Tao Association has fought 2 rounds in a row, and lost once in a lifetime. The result is not bad, why don't we take a break for a while?" "Guild leader? I'm just giving a suggestion," Taoist Master 100 Tribulations said with a smile. "It doesn't matter if you don't agree with my suggestion. After all, I don't look like a dictator." Sage Huan Yang said in a low voice, "I agree with the guild leader's suggestion. This Yin-Yang master's means are weird, we'd better make a plan before acting. I've already lost, if I suffer another loss, I'm afraid it will really damage the reputation of the Kelowna Taoist sect." Since Vice Guild Leader Huan Yang also said so, Taoist Master 100 Tribulations didn't have the final say in the association. But this long-lived guild leader had accumulated prestige for countless years. As the saying goes, the Taoist Master 100 Tribulations is made of iron. The handsome Yin-Yang master was still riding the white fox above the martial arts stage. He was playing with the bead he got from winning the challenge, as if he was waiting for the next challenger. But after a while, no one came up to the martial arts stage. The handsome Yin-Yang master patted the white fox's head gently, indicating it to go back. But at this moment there was a strange sound. It seemed that there was some movement on the martial arts stage. The Yin-Yang master, who had already turned around, looked in the direction of the sound. He saw a white-haired man holding a bamboo staff and wearing round sunglasses standing in a corner of the arena. He didn't know when this white-haired man had appeared. "You want to challenge me?" Yin-Yang Master Saimai asked slowly after a moment of silence. The white-haired guy on the stage took off his sunglasses and hung them on his collar, smiling casually. I'm Momo, the successor of the Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. I want to ask you for some spells to ward off ghosts and evil spirit. It doesn't matter if you have a bead or not since I don't have one. If I win, I can take the bead, but if you win, you won't get anything. Instead, you'll waste your energy. Let's just give each other some pointers. He didn't want the bead, but only wanted some pointers? Uproar. Undoubtedly, this was a world where looks were important, in various senses. This Yin-Yang master was handsome. Riding a white tiger, he was graceful and graceful. He had already displayed the feminine side of a man to the extreme. In the current generation of stinky young girls, looks were justice. This handsome Yin-Yang master's popularity skyrocketed, even becoming the new husband of many girls. On the contrary, this guy who called himself the Taoist master was sloppy like a vagrant, his face full of hardships. He didn't look old, but his hair was gray. He didn't want the bead, but only wanted some pointers. Did he come here to gain some popularity? He must be here to scam, right? He made it sound so nice, but in fact, he didn't want to win at all. He just wanted to gain some attention and then turn it into money? Ordinary people thought so, and quite a few of them. But those present were all transcendents, at least, except for the media, they all had transcendence. They had different opinions about Momo. This guy, when did he go up? Why didn't he do anything? Qian, stage. Fire Cloud Evil God said with interest, this Momo, I met him once at Mount Tai. I didn't expect such a guy to be hidden among the juniors of Kelowna Taoism. He's quite something. Momo isn't as simple as you think. At this time, the true dragon of the Divine Land said indifferently, this guy's state of mind is already there. Although his Dharma power is a little weak, the fruit of the way is something that he can easily get. Dharma power and Dharma power are dispensable to him. Fire Cloud Evil God couldn't help but frown. He was a martial artist, so he couldn't see through this kind of Taoist. But he had an intuition that Momo wasn't simple. Lord Long, you mean, if you hear the Tao in the morning, you can die in the evening? You're the one who's dead. Can't you see he's alive and well? Kelowna's Shinryu spat. Fire Cloud Evil God didn't say anything. He thought it was a mistake to take the 3 beads for convenience's sake. He should have taken no beads, and then went up to the stage to find a guy to beat up when he was annoyed. Come and take care of this temperamental old woman. Heavens! Taoism has a descendant. The 100 Tribulations Taoist master was more reserved and didn't say anything else after his sudden remark. As for Cheonghua Sec's young man surnamed Liu, who had just passed the heavenly tribulation, he showed a hint of surprise. Then he nodded slightly, but then shook his head. It's a pity that he's from the Celestial Master sect, so he's not fated to become an immortal. But he's an anomaly. Dragon Tiger Mountain. Zhang Dowling's orthodoxy? Mr. Song's eyes brightened. It seems that most of Farrell's concentration talisman came from this guy. Good. Kelowna is indeed a land of talents and heroes. It's better this way. The more prosperous it is, the more powerful the dragon vein will be. Senior Yang Taizi didn't say anything, but frowned at Momo. Momo was here, so was his apprentice. Yang Taizi couldn't help looking around the stands. I knew it, he's going to fight. Farrell showed a faint smile. Mr. Gareth and the other households next to him thought that they had seen wrongly. This alloy straight man actually knows how to laugh? Mr. Farrell, do you know this weird guy? Farrell said indifferently, go prepare. Next time, no matter who wins, you'll take over the challenge. Mr. Gareth couldn't help but tremble. His infusion hadn't been completed yet. At this moment Lancelot returned. She looked completely new and even returned to her deacon outfit. She was carrying a long box in her hand. Naturally, the ritual sword Catanat was inside. Gareth, the Queen's secret order, I'll participate in the fight. You arrange it. Lancelot said directly. Mr. Gareth looked at the bottle of foredrip that still had more than half left. He looked at Farrell and then at Lancelot. What's wrong? Lancelot asked directly. Nothing. Watch the fight. Watch the fight first, Mr. Gareth hurriedly said. Arrange it. Bamboo stick, dirty cloth shoes, and a smile. Suddenly, in the eyes of the world, this sloppy guy didn't seem to be as dirty as they imagined. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his face was clean, and so were his eyes. With the passage of time, one's perception of this heavenly master of Longhu Mountain seemed to be changing little by little in a positive direction. He was actually quite good-looking? Although his face was full of hardships, it was also a sign of maturity, right? Did you notice that this Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain might be a natural clothes hanger? His body proportion was too good, wasn't it? His smile seemed to have some kind of magical power. At least, it looked very comfortable. At this time, the yin-yang master sitting on the white fox steered the white fox to descend a little. He looked at Momo and said slowly, "There are rules in the challenge competition, no matter what your intention is. I've heard of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Some rumors." Momo smiled and said, "Actually, it's not that magical." The handsome yin-yang master nodded and said seriously, "Please enlighten me." "You too." Momo waved the bamboo stick in his hand. "You first." At this moment, a voice came from the Tao Association. It was unknown who it was, but it was heard like this: "Little friend Momo, be careful. This yin-yang master has a mysterious technique that specializes in attacking one's divine sense." The handsome yin-yang master just casually glanced at the Tao Association's direction and didn't say anything. Momo shrugged and said, "Why don't I pretend I didn't hear it?" "No need." The yin-yang master said indifferently, "It's not a secret. Besides, it's not a mysterious technique that specializes in attacking one's divine sense." Suddenly, Momo turned around and took something. It was unknown what he wanted to do, but it seemed like he took something out from beside him. It seemed to be something very fierce. Momo clamped the bamboo stick under his armpit and grabbed something with both hands. Something that was struggling. "What's that?" Looking carefully, one could see that the air around Momo's hands was twisting. After a while, the twisting thing gradually showed its original shape. It was a flying serpent with a pair of wings on its ribs. At this moment, the flying snake kept twisting and struggling in Momo's hands, but it couldn't break free no matter how hard it tried. And this little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain seemed to have touched a huge eel, saying happily, "What a big snake, it's enough to eat for several days." The flying snake suddenly hissed strangely, and its whole body emitted a gray-white flame. It seemed to be scalding, so the little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain loosened his hands instantly. It flew away. Momo couldn't help but shout with pity, "The snake's gall is very nutritious, don't go." And this flying snake immediately flew to the side of the yin-yang master, baring its fangs at Momo, looking extremely ferocious. "This is soaring snake." The yin-yang master stretched out his hand, and the flying snake instantly coiled around his arm, finally lifting out from his shoulder. "It's one of the 12 immortal generals I've subdued." Momo said, "They're called immortal generals, they have evil spirit. I've always said that the immortal position is the 3 evils position, very evil. I also have some little guys here, they're not immortal generals but some little ghosts I've just raised." While speaking, Momo took out a shabby small yellow cloth bag, patting it with a bamboo stick. Like herding a sheep, a wisp of gray-white fog was patted out of the bag. The fog rushed out, and in a split second, the arena was filled with chilly wind and the wailing of evil ghosts. Finally, the fog gradually took shape, and it turned out to be the shadow of a young man. This young man's face was pale, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were dull, but he gave people an extremely creepy feeling. "This guy died in vain. I picked him up in the suburbs a few days ago. I took him in because he was pitiful." The little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain said casually, Oh, right, there's a plain wreckage at the place where I picked him up. Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly stood up, saying in a low voice, "This is Gongsun Shiyu?" A long time ago, Gongsun Shiyu and the White Tiger clan leader tried to cause trouble at the summit, but their plan failed because of Boss Luo's appearance, and they were killed. He was supposed to be secretly transported back to the headquarters of the administration of Shenzhou, but the plane was attacked during the transport and exploded in the sky. After that, the administration only found Gongsun Shiyu's body that was shattered by the explosion. The administration originally planned to use the method of soul summoning to capture Gongsun Shiyu's 3 souls and 7 spirits, so that they could ask about what happened, but in the end, they couldn't find Gongsun Shiyu's soul either. I didn't expect it was taken away by the little Taoist master. Fire Cloud Evil God couldn't help but have a strange expression. This Momo, don't tell me he wants to use Gongsun Shiyu's soul to fight. He didn't know what the Xianyuan Palace was thinking. Fire Cloud Evil God subconsciously looked at the place where Chichi Kamaya was standing. The old tortoise and his entourage had been silent the whole time, keeping a very low profile. Now, seeing the appearance of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, this group of people from the Xianyuan Palace, this group of people was actually eating lunch? #######PS1. Thank you, Boss Wudong, for making Miss Yu Yi cute again. She's about to debut. PS2. We're an old married couple, so we don't need to say anything. PS3. Chapter 2010. Gui Qianni, who was eating a sausage with chopped flowers, raised his head and showed a genial smile as if he felt Fire Cloud Evil God's gaze. "Why are you smiling?" Fire Cloud Evil God rolled his eyes. "This old tortoise is so careless, as if nothing has happened. Is this the innate skill of a cowardly tortoise?" He didn't have time to discuss this with Chichi Kamaya. Momo summoned Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul from the martial arts arena, looking as if he was going to fight with this thing. Since this was the conference, Fire Cloud Evil God couldn't stop him directly. He had to wait until after the conference, or after this challenge to see if he could discuss this matter with Momo. The world didn't know who Gongsun Shiyu was, because when Gongsun Shiyu and the acting leader of White Tiger conspired to disrupt the summit meeting, Fire Cloud Evil God ordered the global live broadcast to be cut off for a period of time. If Boss Luo hadn't restarted the live broadcast and announced the iron law of the City of Abstinence to the world, the live broadcast wouldn't have been restarted for the next day. Therefore, when Momo called out Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul, the audience in front of the screen only felt that this ghost was a little creepy. But this ghost should be quite good-looking after being cleaned up. On the martial arts arena, the handsome yin-yang master sized up Gongsun Shiyu's ghost and suddenly said, "This ghost's soul seems to be incomplete. You have a good eye." Momo smiled. "I don't know if this guy was born with a defect or it was too late when I found him. He's missing 1 soul and 2 souls, leaving him with this silly look." The yin-yang master nodded, but the flying snake on his body, the flying snake, disappeared again at this moment. At this time, Transcendent had already guessed that the reason why immortal Huanyang lost so bizarrely in the last round was probably because of this flying snake that would suddenly disappear. It was said that Soaring Snake was a creature that could swim in spacecraft. Its attacks were strange and varied, making it hard to defend against. However, the instant Soaring Serpent disappeared, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, who had been summoned from the martial arts stage, suddenly moved. Gongsun Shiyu waved his right hand and pulled hard, as if he was pulling something out of the air. Gongsun Shiyu grabbed the neck of Soaring Serpent and pulled it out of the spacecraft. His dull face turned ferocious and bloodthirsty. Seeing this, the beautiful yin-yang master frowned. "He doesn't seem to be completely demented." Momo smiled. "Usually it's dummy, but if he's stimulated, he'll have some reaction. Maybe it's his primitive instinct." Interesting. The beautiful yin-yang master held a talisman between her slender fingers and placed it in front of her face. She was softly chanting something. In an instant, the soaring serpent, whose neck was gripped by Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, lit up with grayish-white flames again. The soaring serpent hissed and struggled free from Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. When the gray-white flames died out, a thin young man with fiery red hair appeared on the martial arts stage. This young man seemed to be the incarnation of soaring serpent. At this moment, a powerful force was rising from the young man's body. At the same time, the various clan leaders of the Demon Clan Alliance all frowned, because they were very familiar with this power. Demon power. It was definitely the demon power of a big demon. Is this soaring serpent of the same origin as the soaring serpent in the mountain sea of Kelowna? They couldn't help but have such a question. Besides, a distant memory gradually became clear in their hearts. Legend has it that the soaring serpent was a divine beast, and it was ranked below the four symbols. But in an instant, the soaring serpent, who had just burst out with demon power, welcomed the palm of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. This palm was so fast that it seemed to exceed the soaring serpent's reaction speed, and it directly landed on the soaring serpent's chest. The soaring serpent's body flew backward instantly, and it was about to fly out of the martial arts stage. However, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost attacked again, flashing behind the soaring serpent, and hitting it back again. The soaring serpent was like a rubber ball, bouncing around the martial arts stage under Gongsun Shiyu's ghost's punches and kicks. At this moment, the ferocious expression on Gongsun Shiyu's ghost's face became denser and denser. He had completely turned into an evil ghost. In the distance, the new Grand Duke of the 13 Families looked at Gongsun Shiyu's ghost on the martial arts stage and suddenly chuckled, muttering to himself, "I wonder if that guy's son is feeling as if he ate a dead rat now? Grand Duke, Fire Cloud Evil God didn't give us any beads at the beginning. Are we just going to watch like this?" "Don't worry." Balegan smiled casually, but he directly threw a bell at the vampire who spoke and suddenly laughed. "How about using this to challenge?" "You mean, challenge Fire Cloud Evil God?" The vampire couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. Using that terrifying warrior, a knight? "Up to you," Balegan said indifferently, "but from a certain point of view, this will be a good show with a predestined meaning. This script should be written by Kaloya." The vampire subconsciously looked at the bell in his hand, and then looked at the passage behind the seat. In the darkness of the passage, there was a terrifying monster with steel needles all over its body sitting there. It seemed that compared to last night, the shell on this monster's body had increased a little, and it was darker in color. Rubber ball. Soaring serpent's figure was still bouncing around the martial arts stage, facing Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. It had no power to resist. The handsome yin-yang master couldn't help but show a dignified expression on his face. He slowly exhaled, saying softly, "Kelowna, worthy of being a terrifying land. Even without Shinryu, there are still many capable people." "Brother, you didn't try your best either." Momo looked up and said, "You accepted the 12 divine generals, but you only shouted out one." The handsome yin-yang master shook his head. "The 12 divine generals were subdued by my ancestor. After my ancestor left, the 12 divine generals were automatically sealed. For thousands of years, no one in the family could completely unlock their seals. As for me, I only unlocked the seals of 5 divine generals." Momo patted the shabby cloth bag in his hand. "Actually, only this silly one in my hand is relatively powerful. The other little ghosts are real ghosts, ordinary people who died in vain." The handsome yin-yang master smiled. This smile was so beautiful, like a peerless beauty, making it hard to distinguish whether he was male or female. "Now, I think it doesn't matter if I'm a bead or not," the handsome yin-yang master said softly. "To be able to meet Mr. Mo at this conference is actually a joyous occasion. I will give you my greatest respect." Momo took a deep breath, waving his hand. The raging Gongsun Shiyu waved his hands like a wild beast, as if he was restrained by something, but he was pulled back to Momo's side. At the same time, the yin-yang master took out another talisman, a talisman with black and gold characters, shooting it out. The golden and black characters instantly split into 4, and at the same time, 4 figures rushed out from the 4 split talismans. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Go Zhen, Taishang. The 4 divine generals stood on the 4 corners of the martial arts practice platform. At the same time, a soaring serpent soared into the sky and stood in the center of the martial arts practice platform. The yin-yang master was standing on the back of the white fox, holding an ancient sword in his hand. Beside him was a circular mirror and a piece of green jade that revolved around him. Instantly, 4 huge demonic forces no weaker than a soaring serpent erupted from the 4 corners of the martial arts stage. These 4 divine generals all had the demonic force of a big demon. Together with the power of the soaring serpent too, they formed a gigantic mandara wheel of light that could cover the entire martial arts practice platform. The yin-yang master pointed his ancient sword forward, and the huge devil's snare halo spun instantly. Then, it stopped, and a bead in the devil's snare halo released a huge light beam that shot toward Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. At this time, the evil spirit roared, waved its fist, and directly faced the light beam. Boom! The shock waves created by the fist and the light beam flattened the remaining part of the martial arts stage and spread to the 8 grandstands. Seeing this, the true dragon of China frowned and had no choice but to set up a golden wall. Xiaoxi felt that she had suffered a loss. Even if she had a power bank, it shouldn't be used like this. She felt that she had been tricked by Fire Cloud, evil god. Each of these transcendents could destroy a city. How tiring would it be to protect them? At this moment, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost was in a stalemate with the huge light beam. However, the devil's snare halo started to spin again under the yin-yang master's control. The power of the light pillar increased in an instant. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost seemed to be at a disadvantage and was slowly being suppressed. After all, he had lost his physical body and was only a remnant soul. Although he could survive with the help of the Heavenly Master Sect's Taoist spells, he was still a far cry from when he was alive. Sword! Give me the sword! Give me the sword! Gongsun Shiyu's ghost roared, and he kept shouting sword. He even reached out his hand toward the ground, as if he wanted to grab something. Give me the sword! Gongsun Shiyu's ghost was about to fall into the huge pit in the arena under the pressure of the light beam. I don't have a sword, but I have a bamboo stick. You can use it if you don't mind, Momo suddenly said. Then, he bit his finger and wiped the bamboo stick before throwing it out. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost caught the bamboo stick with one hand. Sword! Gongsun Shiyu's ghost yelled and pointed with his sword. Then, he turned into a dark golden dragon and crashed into the light beam of the devil's snare halo. The dark golden dragon went against the flow, breaking the light beam 1 foot at a time, and finally reached the devil's snare halo. The 5 divine generals had serious expressions on their faces as they once again unleashed their demonic energy. However, the dark golden dragon was like a big fish trying to break through a fishing net. It actually caused the entire devil's snare wheel to cave in. In the distant stands, Mr. Song frowned and said in a low voice, "Son of Heaven's swordsmanship, the 8th move, Golden Dragon's fury shocks the heavens and earth? This ghost, what the hell?" The light and shadow flashed on people's faces. The ones who were stunned were the humans in front of the screen. The horror of the supernatural power, even through the screen, shocked people's hearts. The powerful power of this creature was awakening some instincts in people's bodies. It seemed to gradually turn into a hot current. Unconsciously, it made people fear and crave power. On the ground, Momo raised his head and made a hand gesture. He was sitting cross-legged above the huge pit, chanting something. Then, a solemn treasure image appeared behind him. In a split second, the bamboo stick in Gongsun Shiyu's ghost hand shone brightly. Like a needle piercing a balloon, when the devil's snare halo was finally broken, the entire halo was shattered. The 5 immortal generals spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The dark golden dragon soared into the sky above the martial arts stage. The yin-yang master stood on the white fox, still surrounded by the bronze mirror and Magatama, but he held the sword and drove the white fox to hack at the dark golden dragon. When the ancient sword collided with the bamboo stick in Gongsun Shiyu's ghost hand, the bamboo stick couldn't withstand the huge force and exploded. Meanwhile, the round mirror beside the yin-yang master shot out a beam of light. Under the light, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost suffered great pain. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost body emitted terrifying green smoke, but he still held on crazily and fiercely. His ferocious expression was terrifying. However, under the light of the round mirror, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost figure began to melt. Then, the yin-yang master waved the ancient sword, cutting off one of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost arm. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost screamed and fell from the sky. At this moment, the handsome yin-yang master came over on the white fox, pointing the tip of the ancient sword at Momo's chest. Momo, who was sitting cross-legged in the air, suddenly opened his eyes and pushed out his hand seals. Demon seal! Everyone could hear the words demon seal. At the same time, a huge amount of spiritual energy gathered crazily in the sky, drawing a huge golden imperial edict. The imperial edict descended at a speed faster than the yin-yang masters. The imperial edict passed through the yin-yang master's body and sank into the ground. Instantly, the ancient sword in the yin-yang master's hand lost its radiance, the round mirror lost its luster, and the Magatama stopped spinning. Even the yin-yang master's spiritual energy fell silent. As for the 5 godly generals who were also passed through by the imperial edict, they also lost their demonic energy and fell to the ground. All of this made people feel like they were in the Forbidden City. Except that the Forbidden City sealed a huge city while the demon seal here was only the size of a martial arts arena. However, this little celestial master of Mount Longhu made people unconsciously fearful. The target of his devil sealing was a powerful yin-yang master, his divine general, and the 3 extraordinary treasures in his hands. Was the heavenly master sect of Dragon Tiger Mountain so powerful? The yin-yang master who lost all his power could only fall helplessly. Seeing that he was about to fall into the deep pit, Momo jumped up and held this handsome yin-yang master firmly. The yin-yang master didn't show any fear. Instead, he looked astonished. Momo lowered his head and smiled at him, then said softly, "You lost." The yin-yang master was startled and felt his body fall again. But this time, the fall ended very soon. He had fallen onto the flat ground outside the arena. Of course, it was more like Momo had carried him out of the arena. "This guy's body feels so soft?" Momo suddenly muttered to himself. Momo shook his head and waved his hand. The imperial edict that was shaken into the ground instantly shattered, turning into specks of golden light and dissipating. At the same time, the yin-yang master's lost power became active again. The ancient sword, round mirror, and Magatama glowed again. As for the 5 godly generals, they stood up one after another. At this moment, the handsome yin-yang master got up with a sullen face, wanting to say something but stopped on second thought. It's just a competition, not a battle of life and death. Let's just do something." Momo smiled casually. "Besides, I'm out of mana." After saying that, the young celestial master of Mount Longhu sat down on the ground, looking exhausted. "Let's not talk about the final demon sealing edict. Let's just talk about Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. A ghost, and an incomplete one at that. It was this little heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain who had been supporting him with his mana. This was a warrior who lacked mana." Chapter 2011. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost turned back into a gray mist and seemed to be unwilling to accept the result, but it was put into the shabby cloth bag in the end. At the same time, a bead flew in front of Momo. However, This young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't take it. He just flicked his hand and sent the bead back to the young master. A loss is a loss. Since I'm not as good as you, I have no excuse to stay. This handsome young master was very honest and even shook his head. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain was more honest than him. This thing is troublesome. I can't keep it even if I take it now. I already said that I don't have any power. If the next person challenges me, I can only give it up. The young master frowned. Momo chuckled. You don't want the things you've worked so hard for to end up in someone else's hands, do you? In that case, I'll keep it until you recover your power. Momo shook his head casually. He didn't say yes or no. He just stretched his back and slowly walked to the stand. They looked at this young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain and felt that Momo was indeed very weak, as if he really didn't have the ability to fight anymore. But the young master was different. His magic power was still very strong. 5 divine servants, 3 powerful items, and that peerless devil's snare halo. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't have the power to fight anymore, but this young master could obviously last for a long time. Most of the Transcendents didn't want to attack this young master, especially those who had the tier of God, because they found that this young master didn't show any signs of using the tier of God. Maybe this young master didn't meet the legendary witch, so he didn't have the tier of God. But what if he had the tier of God, but didn't use it? There were plenty of soft persimmons. Why pick this hard bone? The martial arts stage finally started to be repaired again. Under the eyes of Kelowna Shinryu, a group of people from the administration went up in fear. This was actually Fire Cloud Evil God's intention. After all, there wasn't even a single corner of the martial arts stage. It was just a huge pit. Not only was it unsightly, it was also impractical. Long Shirua didn't say anything, but Fire Cloud Evil God left his seat at this time. Long Shirua knew that this old man deliberately let people repair the martial arts stage in order to free up some time. He went to find Momo, because Momo had Gongsun Shiu's remnant soul. Momo returned to his seat under the gazes of the Tao cultivators. Some were shocked, some were scared, some were confused, and some were resentful, probably because Momo didn't take the young master's bead. The human heart. The little heavenly master of Mount Longhu frowned and shook his head. Then, he turned around and walked toward another spectator's stand. However, a man wearing a white training suit was standing at the entrance of the spectator's stand. He looked at Momo but didn't say anything. Momo understood his meaning and walked over. The man in the white training garb was naturally the Fire Cloud Evil God, an old man who was also disliked by many of the Tao sects and demons of the Divine Prefecture. Don't mind their short-sighted eyes. Fire Cloud Evil God said with a faint smile when Momo arrived. When I was young, many of them looked at me like that, but they only dared to do it behind my back. Momo blinked, thinking for a while. You mean they are afraid of you because you're good at fighting? Fire Cloud Evil God said indifferently. It's not that I'm good at fighting, it's that I dare to fight. Momo shook his head, saying casually, I don't fight, I catch ghosts. That's why I came to you. Fire Cloud Evil God said directly. I hope you can take out Gongsun Shiu's remnant soul temporarily, and I hope you can help us with the investigation. It's about the plane crash that escorted Gongsun Shiu. Momo said in surprise, I told you, I only saw the wreckage when I got there. As for Gongsun Shiu, you saw it too. He's in a daze and I couldn't get anything out of him. Besides, don't you know how to open the black box of the plane to check the data? You've used too much extraordinary power and forgot about the normal means. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head. Of course it wasn't that simple. Didn't this little heaven master know that Gongsun Shiu's remnant soul was a hot potato? Xianyuan Palace hadn't said anything yet, but once it did, it would become a serious matter. But at this moment, Momo took out a cloth bag and took out a blank paper talisman. Gongsun Shiu's ghost flew out of the cloth bag and was caught by Momo, rubbing it together with the blank paper talisman. Then, Momo threw a talisman ball at Fire Cloud Evil God, which was full of incantations. "What are you doing?" Fire Cloud Evil God frowned subconsciously. Momo shrugged. "This guy died a wrongful death and his resentment is very strong. If left alone, he'll become a deadly thing sooner or later. I was going to release his soul from purgatory and I happened to have a competition with someone, so I used it temporarily. If your administration needs it, you can take it back. Anyway, you don't lack the means to release souls from purgatory." Fire Cloud Evil God held the talisman ball in his hand. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost was restless inside. The talisman ball kept shaking but couldn't leave Fire Cloud Evil God's palm. He suddenly said, "Aren't you afraid that I have an ulterior motive for asking you to take away his remnant soul?" Momo said casually, "You have such a golden signboard, I don't think you'll ruin your own signboard. Besides, Dragon Tiger Mountain is just a small sect. It doesn't have long arms and can't manage so many things. We can only manage what we can. After all, people have limited power and time, but trivial things are endless. No wonder you could reach this step." Fire Cloud Evil God nodded slowly. "If I could meet you in the past, I would have come to challenge you directly." The past that the Fire Cloud Evil God was talking about was naturally the time when he was in his prime, the time when he slashed all the way from the east of Changbai Mountain to the south of the South Sea, the time when he used the world's Taoist demon race as a stepping stone on his path to invincibility. So scary. Momo smiled. "Fortunately, I was born so many years later. I don't have to live in fear." Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head and sighed. "My two disciples aren't as good as you." "I'm different." Momo shook his head. "I just have more special experiences than others. I'm not as magical as you think. Opportunities are also part of the evolution of strength." Fire Cloud Evil God said indifferently, "Those who can stand here, who doesn't have unusual opportunities." Momo didn't want to talk more about this topic. He thought for a bit and knocked out 3 gray figures from the bag. "Oh right, there are 3 more ghosts. I picked them up in the valley in the east a few days ago. They should be your people. Since I have the chance, I'll return them to you." Fire Cloud Evil God looked at the 3 phantoms that had taken shape. When he saw what they looked like, he was stunned. "This is Boss Fu?" The 3 ghosts that Momo knocked out were none other than Boss Fu and the other 2 agents from the Shenzhou administration who had gone to investigate and died tragically when Feral destroyed the drone that day. Yen Xiaoxi wanted to summon their souls back, but it was to no avail. "I didn't expect them to be in your hands. I happened to pass by and saw them wandering in the valley. They were full of resentment," Momo said. "I've converted some of them these days. I'll leave the rest to you. If you have any questions, ask them now. I'll send them away as soon as possible. After all, we're separated by life and death. They're all good agents. They've done a lot for Kelowna Authority." Fire Cloud Evil God heaved a sigh, saying seriously, "Momo, this old man owes you a favor." Momo just smiled casually. He didn't say yes or no. He lazily stretched and walked past. "I'm sleepy. Let's find a place to sleep." Just like that, he slowly walked into the depths of the passage. After a while, Fire Cloud Evil God lowered his head to look at the talisman ball in his hand. But at this moment, a voice came from behind Fire Cloud Evil God. It was Chi-Chi Kamaya's voice. "Kelowna is full of talent. But this guy is the best in the younger generation. Perhaps only Lai Kaixing can be compared with him." The reason for the old turtle's voice was that he was still holding a lunchbox and eating. Fire Cloud Evil God rolled his eyes, saying grumpily, "Did you throw away Gongsun Shiu from Xianyuan Palace's Gongsun family?" The old turtle said, "How dare Gongsun Shiu say he's from the younger generation? He's 800 or 900 years old. He's just a little old man, okay?" Fire Cloud Evil God raised the talisman ball in his hand. "What are you going to do? Leave it with me for now." Actually, this talisman ball was quite cute. There was even a cute version of Gongsun Shiyu's head on it. The sun is too bright up there. I just came down to find a shady place to eat. Chichi Kamaya chuckled. I didn't see or hear anything, hee hee hee. Old turtle. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head. I'll take it for now. I'll return it to you when I'm done with it. Next time, I'll return it to you personally. This lunchbox tastes really good. Go, Lancelot. Challenge this yin-yang master. Yes, the moment the martial arts arena was repaired again, Mr. Gareth stood up and waved his hand while holding the hanger used for the intravenous drip. Yes, go, beast Lancelot. He actually thought so in his heart. Lancelot said today that she would let Gareth arrange the following matters. Now that Gareth gave the order, she naturally didn't say anything. Carrying the box with the ritual sword in her hand, she jumped directly into the center of the new martial arts platform. Regarding Mr. Gareth's actions, Farrell just looked on coldly. Anyway, Mr. Gareth acted as if he didn't see it. Farrell said indifferently, "The ritual sword can only be used in the territory of Britain. You're expecting too much." Mr. Gareth couldn't help but be stunned at this time. The ritual sword can be used? Isn't this thing just an item with a greater symbolic meaning? Farrell glanced at him indifferently and didn't say anything. Mr. Gareth couldn't help but frown. Although Farrell was crazy, there was some reason behind his madness. He wouldn't speak carelessly. So, the ritual sword really had some secrets that he didn't know? But no matter what, Lancelot still went up, representing the Unite mechanism. She directly pointed the spearhead at the Japanese yin-yang master who had just fought a big battle. This female knight from the Unite mechanism, although wearing a solemn and ancient deacon's equipment, was still very eye-catching. But now, she wanted to challenge the yin-yang master. She wanted to take advantage of the situation. She thought that the yin-yang master was actually weak after the big battle. She wanted to take advantage of the situation? But the challenge rule was that as long as one was challenged, one couldn't refuse. Under such rules, even if one was challenged dozens of times, as long as one still had the bead in one's hand, one could only brace himself and face the challenge. The Japanese transcendents criticized the Unite mechanism for being shameless. It was no wonder that the transcendents in Europe didn't play around and so on. This guy, doesn't he know that Saimai just fought a big battle? He doesn't even have the spirit of a warrior. He is a knight. The handsome yin-yang master shook his head. Then he doesn't have the spirit of a knight at all. The yin-yang master shook his head and didn't say anything. At this moment, he slowly stood up. It was obvious that he didn't mind fighting again. But at this moment, a barefoot samurai suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed on the yin-yang master's shoulder. The barefoot samurai calmly said, "Let me fight this battle. You can rest." Kaijuro? The yin-yang master Saimai was startled. After pondering for a moment, he finally nodded his head. The samurai's name was Kaijuro. His full name was Renshin Kaijuro. He was one of the members of the Japanese Transcendence representative team. He was the current generation member of the ancient Japanese swordsmanship sect, Wuming Kamikaze sect. He was a swordsman with a mutated red ghost eye. When the ghost eye shined, he would transform into the most terrifying sword demon. Japan also had Taoist techniques, but they had evolved into yin-yang technique. At the same time, there were also many monsters and legends. There were also martial artists, but most of the martial artists were samurai and swordsmen. They were simpler and more focused. Since Master Rinsheng wants to fight, please bring him along. At this time, a masked man in black handed a long box to Kaijuro. Inside the box was an ancient sword. The ancient sword, the round mirror, and the Magatama were specially sent by the Japanese royal family to prepare for the conference. They were for the use of the entire team. But at this time, Kaijuro directly pushed the brocade box away and said calmly, "This, Celestial Wolf, is enough for me. I am not used to using other weapons." With that, Kaijuro Ninshing jumped directly into the martial arts practice stage. He looked at Lancelot and said calmly, "If you want to challenge him, you can. But you have to defeat me first. Please." Lancelot directly put the box on the ground. But she didn't open it. She just chanted the elf's wrinkle and put on the knight's armor of inheritance. With a wave of her hand, a black knight's sword fell into her hand. "This is a good sword." At this time, Kaijuro's eyes focused, and then he said in a low voice, "A demon's sword." After saying that, he slowly pulled out a katana from his waist. This katana was like a piece of broken iron. It didn't even have a hilt. It was just wrapped with a worn yellow-white cloth. This should be a duel of martial arts. There shouldn't be as many special effects as Taoist techniques. But when the two of them looked at each other, it made people unconsciously nervous. "Can I sit here? The place where I came from doesn't seem to welcome me very much." "Of course, there are many seats here." "Then I won't stand on ceremony, Senior." After saying that, the young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain slowly sat down, next to Boss Luo and Miss Maid. It wasn't Boss Luo who asked him to find this place. Instead, it was this little celestial master from Dragon Tiger Mountain who came looking for him because he saw it. Chapter 2012. Looking at the time, it was already noon. From the beginning of the competition to the beginning, the competition, and now the challenge match, time passed neither fast nor slow, but the people in front of the screen seemed to have forgotten the time. Unless it was necessary, they wouldn't leave the screen for even a second. They even forgot to eat. As a stinky young man, I'm not used to watching such a wonderful performance without eating something. Momo couldn't help sighing. Then he picked up the chopsticks and ate the food in the lunchbox. He wasn't afraid of greasy food, so he directly picked up a piece of fried chicken. The lunchbox was given by Boss Luo. He said one of his friends made too much and it would be a waste if they couldn't finish it. Enjoying alone was better than enjoying together. Good things should be shared, so he gave a layer of lunchbox to Momo. On the martial arts stage, Lancelot and Kaijuro were still in the stage of testing each other. They did not have the intention to use their true strength. The current fighting style of these two people was slightly more conservative than the previous people who went on the stage. Even so, in the eyes of those who didn't know about supernatural, this duel was still wonderful. "Tea, Mr. Momo." At this moment, Miss Maid slowly handed over a cup of tea. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain hurriedly put down the lunchbox and received it with both hands, blinking his eyes. The tea was poured from a pink thermos flask. Yes, it was the kind of thermos flask that was necessary for a picnic. This tea wasn't real tea. Momo even saw some wolfberries floating in the cup. "Seniors, you're really in a good mood." He smiled casually. These two sat here like old cadres. Perhaps they just came to watch the duel. Watching the duel live was more wonderful than watching it through the screen. Otherwise, if this senior joined the duel, he would be a bully, and he wouldn't need to prove himself. Black 10-minute. Momo was also dumbfounded at that time. Although he knew this senior was powerful, the appearance of Black 10 minutes made Momo realize that his previous conjectures about this senior were as ignorant as a frog in a well. Boss Luo said casually, "People need to eat well and have strength. This is the most basic requirement." "Well, how did you find me?" "Senior, don't you know?" Momo asked. Boss Luo laughed. "I don't know everything. When you don't need to know, you don't have to know," Miss Maid added in her heart, but her face didn't show anything. "Senior knows." Momo shook his head and said, "When I used the demon seal to seal that young brother Yin-Yang master, the edict fell on the ground and spread out, creating waves similar to sonar. It's an additional method of investigation. There's nothing special about the other places, but the place where I'm sitting right now is slightly distorted." "So, you guess that I'm here?" Boss Luo nodded. Momo said, "I'm not guessing. I know only Senior can be here." Boss Luo chuckled and picked up a bobo sausage. After chewing and swallowing it, he said slowly, What's the matter? Momo took a deep breath. After we parted at Mount Tai, I wandered around the Kelowna continent looking for secrets, but I couldn't find a way to wake Jean-Eyre up. I have a feeling that I won't get any result even if I go down. I think I can only find you, Senior. Boss Luo said indifferently. The person you want to wake up will wake up soon. I don't need to do anything and you don't need to do anything. Really? Momo's eyes brightened, saying with great joy, Senior, thank you for telling me. It's for a fee. Boss Luo smiled. Tell me your story during this time, it's my consultation fee. Momo was startled, but then he nodded slightly. He touched the hot tea in his hand and slowly took a sip. The moment the tea entered his mouth, he felt a sudden warm current in his body, quickly filling up his empty blue bar. Momo looked at Miss Maid who served him tea with a trace of gratitude. He began to tell his story. The battle on the martial arts stage seemed to have disappeared from his sight. Instead, it was replaced by the place he had been to before. I went to Mount Chilian and stayed in the local herdsman's home. Momo's story was unfolding slowly. However, on the arena, Lancelot and Kayashiro had given up the conservative fighting style. In short, they were fighting for real. Even through the screen, ordinary people could feel the danger of the battle between the two, especially when Kayashiro's eyes turned red. Ordinary people couldn't judge the strength of the transcendent. They could only use the most direct way to judge the strength of the transcendent. But the transcendents on the stands could do that. They began to face the transcendence of this remote island for the first time. The yin-yang master in the previous battle was already very powerful, the kind of power that made many transcendents in small places feel despair. Even in the eyes of the transcendents, this overly beautiful yin-yang master had the power to threaten them, but it turned out that apart from the yin-yang master, there was also a swordsman called Ninsei Kayashiro. The red ghost eyes, the celestial wolf. That was broken but could release a terrifying light, and the Womiyaji Ryu swordsmanship. Lancelot was also remarkable. Although she was young, with the inheritance of the 12 knights, her strength was firmly at the forefront of the younger generation, but this wasn't too surprising. Or perhaps, for the transcendents, Lancelot's strength was reasonable. Although the knight mechanism didn't play with the churches and the Magician Association for a long time and even seemed to be on the decline, it was still a giant in the past. Even though it had gone downhill over the years, its foundation was still there. Therefore, even though Lancelot's performance was strong, it was reasonable. At this time, the two of them were still evenly matched. Ninsei Kayashiro, who had activated his red ghost eyes, the fierce look on his face gradually disappeared and was replaced by a carefree laughter. Awesome! Awesome! I haven't had such a great battle in 10 years. Ninsei Kayashiro suddenly raised the celestial wolf in his hand. This is the ultimate secret of my Womiyaji Ryu. Please take it. As he spoke, a golden light shot up to the sky and turned into a huge yellow dragon. The yellow dragon fell down and bit Lancelot directly. On the martial arts stage, Lancelot raised the indestructible lake light in her hands and slashed towards the sky. The moment the enormous sword light touched the yellow dragon, it seemed to have a suppressive effect. The sword light and the yellow dragon were in a deadlock for a moment, and the sword light actually broke through the yellow dragon like a hot knife through butter. In the end, the yellow dragon was directly shattered. Finally, the sword light shot into the sky, directly splitting the clouds in the sky, and finally disappeared. The battle between the sword light and the yellow dragon was very extraordinary. Momo's story was interrupted because of this. He said, "It seems that Ms. Knight is going to win." The servant girl said indifferently, "That's a bit of a trick. The indestructible lake light has the property of breaking the dragon, which can restrain Ninsei Kayashiro's move. She's lucky." "She's just lucky?" Momo didn't completely agree. "You two are not from the same dimension as us, so there's no value in talking about it." He shook his head. Since he knew the result, there was no need to wait. He continued to tell his story. The scattered power didn't completely calm down for a long time. But at this moment, Ninsei Kayashiro had already put down the celestial wolf in his hand. His face was slightly pale as he said directly, "I lost. I'll challenge you again next year at this time." After saying this, the barefoot swordsman turned around and walked down the martial arts stage. He didn't show any dissatisfaction, nor did he curse Bakayaro. Instead, he silently returned to the Japanese supernatural team. Then, he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. Before Kelowna's Shinryu announced, a bead was shot out from the Yin-Yang Master's hand and finally landed in Lancelot's hand. The handsome Yin-Yang Master said indifferently, "We admit defeat for this round." But the Yin-Yang Master didn't intend to challenge again. Japan only had one bead left. This Yin-Yang Master didn't intend to challenge again. Perhaps it was because he had consumed too much energy in the last round and hadn't recovered yet? Then, after the female knight of the Knight mechanism left the stage, could he take the opportunity to challenge this Yin-Yang Master? The female knight Lancelot was also a good target. After all, she had already revealed her strength on the stage. No, he had to wait. There were too many supernatural experts here. If he revealed his strength too early, it wouldn't be beneficial to the number of beads he would get. The rules of the challenge were more favorable for the challengers who fought later. However, to everyone's surprise, this female knight from the Knight mechanism didn't intend to stop there. She continued to stay on the stage and pointed her demon sword at one of the 8 stands, the place where the transcendent team that obtained a bead from the battle was at. It was at Mr. Gareth's behest that they were challenging an extraordinary team that was born in the ancient Ganges civilization and carried a hint of curry. Clearly, that team was a temporary splinter from India. In this extraordinary summit, India's supernatural experts didn't use cheat. Therefore, no matter if it was the report on the first day or the previous competition, it didn't attract too much attention. But this obviously wasn't Farrell's intention. Therefore, Mr. Gareth was actually panicking. But he only wanted to fight steadily. He didn't want to be stubborn and get into trouble with those powerful supernatural experts. Originally, Mr. Gareth felt that this conservative approach would definitely cause Farrell to be dissatisfied. But what Mr. Gareth didn't expect was that Farrell didn't flare up this time. He actually tacitly agreed and didn't say anything. Gareth could only feel uneasy. He heard Farrell say indifferently, "It's good to beat this Kshatriya." Mr. Gareth couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Did this crazy knight have some deep prejudice against this race that used cheats? But speaking of which, there was indeed a deep relationship between Britain and India. This race that lived beside the Ganges River was ruled by Britain for a long time. Britain's monarch even directly became the Emperor of India. At this moment, the few Kshatriya warriors who were challenged glared at each other. It was as if they had met an enemy. A warrior of the Kshatriya directly jumped onto the training platform and said, "Today I will," before he could finish. He really didn't finish. This Kshatriya warrior was actually knocked out of the arena by Lancelot's sword. He didn't see wrongly. It was really just one sword attack. Moreover, it didn't have many special effects. It was just a simple attack. After this simple attack, perhaps because she was also surprised, Lancelot was also at a loss. The magic sword in her hand hung in the air, as if she didn't know where to put it. This is fake, right? Third brother, aren't you a race that uses cheats? The emotions of the audience in front of the screen were hard to describe. The transcendents present couldn't help but frown. The transcendents weren't shocked by the female knight's strength. They were shocked that this Kshatriya warrior was so King weak. Could it be that this guy joined the team with money? At the same time, this match, Knight mechanism wins. Kelowna's Shinryu's slightly strange voice slowly sounded. Although this Kshatriya warrior wasn't much, his standard was still above average. Shinryu could see that the Kshatriya warrior's level was clearly seen through by Kelowna's Shinryu the moment he stepped onto the arena. That was why she found it strange. Even if he wasn't a match, he didn't know that he would be knocked out of the arena with a simple attack. Even acting wasn't that fake okay? Could it be that this Kshatriya team had already been secretly bribed by the Ignite mechanism? It must be known that this Kshatriya team had obtained a pearl in the competition. In that situation, without a certain level of ability, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. So, this acting wasn't good? Losing just like that, it was too fake. Forget it. Kelowna's Shinryu shook his head. If his acting wasn't good, then so be it. At least it was better than going up on stage and doing an awkward dance. You've already won 2 matches in a row, Kelowna's Shinryu asked again. Do you still intend to continue challenging? Lancelot went up on stage as a challenger. Then, as long as she didn't step down, she was still a challenger. If they wanted to take the pearl from Lancelot, they could only wait for her to step down. I will continue to challenge. Lancelot quickly responded. She was using her own name to go up on stage. Anyway, Kelowna's Taoist sect had set a precedent, so there was nothing to say. So, as long as they had the ability to keep the pearl, it didn't matter how many people they split. They were welcome to challenge. And so, Lancelot chose another opponent who had only obtained a single pearl in the competition. However, what was inconceivable was that this time, Lancelot still sent her opponent flying out of the arena with a simple attack. A female knight from the Ignite mechanism, triple kill. Things seemed to be getting weirder and weirder. Could it be that this girl was the daughter of this world, as if she had the help of the gods? ######PS1. Thank you Boss Wudong for giving Miss Maid a cute picture PS2, 0/1, PS3, as usual. Chapter 2013. Slap. A palm suddenly slapped his neck, and then there was one less mosquito in the world. The guy who killed the mosquito shifted his body and changed his posture. Soon, the sound of snoring came out again. He looked very indecent. Ugh. Eleanor, I can't eat anymore. Let me go. I really can't eat anymore. Ugh, there were even some strange, painful sounds coming from this guy's mask. In this power competition, there were actually people who didn't care about the competition at all. Instead, they were snoring from the beginning. I've had enough. These guys who called themselves the 3K. Speaking of which, who was Eleanor? If it weren't for the fact that the other masked guy was holding a notebook and pen in his hand, writing and drawing diligently, and seemed to have a decent attitude as he took notes, he would have long been unable to stand it and would have mocked and ridiculed them. This was a local racist trash organization in America. However, speaking of which, the Eagle Jam country that had the absolute advantage in terms of national strength didn't have any outstanding achievements in the field of transcendence. Other than a few masked guys, it seemed that only the Black Order was reported to the Eagle Jam country from its territory. However, the Black Order didn't originate from the Eagle Jam country. It was in the European continent. Because of the Church's ruthless attitude, it had to follow the upsurge of immigration and quietly develop in the Eagle Jam country where transcendents were lacking. However, the nearby spectators who were affected by the sound of a sleeping guy killing a mosquito soon stopped caring. They were more concerned about the next challenge. The female knight of the Ignite mechanism won 3 out of 3 battles. The first battle was commendable, but the next 2 battles were too fake. However, now that Lancelot's beads were full, she automatically lost the qualification to be a challenger and could only be challenged. From the strength displayed by Lancelot, she was far less terrifying than the 100 Calamity Priest and the Japanese Onmyoji. The strength of this female knight was an acceptable strength, a strength that could be defeated. However, Lancelot's 3 victories gave another idea to the transcendents present who had the strength but missed the beads due to various reasons. Instead of waiting blindly, Why not take the initiative to attack and eliminate those who had no ability in the first place? Some people managed to snatch the pearl during the competition. Most of them were willing to do so because of the golden light wall released by Kelowna and Shinryu. Once that thing was released, it was impossible to enter the arena again. However, there were always some people who were lucky enough to pick up the pearl and leave immediately, thinking that they had gotten a good deal for nothing. Perhaps the female knight's next two opponents were really weak, so she was able to fight evenly. Just like the human countries, there were very developed and powerful countries all over the world, but at the same time there were also poor countries where the people were still suffering from hunger, and the entire national treasury couldn't even gather the money for a supercar. Even Transcendence had barren lands. Even the revival of Qi half a year ago could hardly change those places that had been barren since ancient times. Because of that barren nature, extraordinary powers were like seeds that could hardly germinate in those places, and were still in the budding stage even now. Their minds instantly became active, and in the following time, they put their ideas into practice. When Lancelot waited for a moment and no one came up to challenge her, she returned to Mr. Gareth with the 3 pearls. A magician from the Northern European diplomatic mission directly came up to the arena. He picked a soft persimmon. Mr. Gareth didn't care about this at this time. In this conference, his goal for himself was to at least keep 1 pearl. Anyway, the Queen didn't give him a death order to do what he had to do. He couldn't do it. If Farrell was excluded, the knight mechanism itself had a fatal shortcoming of lacking high-end combat power. This time, Lancelot was able to bring back 3 pearls, which was indeed a big surprise for Gareth. Lancelot, you are my pride. He was not stingy with his praise. After returning to China, I will use all my connections to find a suitable boyfriend for you. The silent female knight just glanced at Mr. Gareth expressionlessly and immediately sat down. At this time, Mr. Gareth also pulled out the drip needle and slowly stood up. I'm going to warm up. Like many transcendents who chose to directly pick the soft persimmon fruit at this time, Mr. Gareth also planned to do so. He didn't intend to participate in the high-level battle, so he might as well try to maximize the results of the knight mechanism on the low-level battlefield. So, Mr. Farrell, I'm going up. Where is Farrell? At this time, Mr. Gareth discovered one thing. He didn't know when Farrell had started to disappear again. The competition was in full swing, but it ushered in a competition schedule that couldn't be said to be unexciting, but it gave people a feeling that something was missing. The various transcendent teams at this time had hundreds of tricks up their sleeve. Some were strange, some were ferocious, and they were indeed amazing. But they still felt that something was missing. Well, there was no aura that could easily shatter the sky and the earth between the strong. But even so, the bead that Fire Cloud Evil God took out gradually began to gather at this time. The bead slowly flowed into the list of the Security Council that was originally drawn up by the summit meeting. Moreover, for the time being, no wild strong appeared to break the list that was originally drawn up. Somewhere in the stands, Mr. Che Tian, who was holding a pen and taking notes, slowly wrote some of his own opinions at the end of a page. This challenge was indeed a competition used to block all voices against the existence of the Security Council. In the end, at the end of this competition, it would evolve into a competition for the right to speak on the Security Council's list. After slowly writing this line of words, Mr. Che Tian thought again, and then wrote another line of words. According to the evaluation standards of the Secret Society, Subworld Number 3, half a year after the Spirit Chi explosion, can temporarily be evaluated as a 4-star transcendent civilization. In addition, it has the potential to become a 5-star civilization. The tip of Mr. Che Tian's pen paused on the word potential and lightly tapped a few times. After a moment of silence, he suddenly erased that line. He flipped to a new page, and this page started recording the schedule of the Challenger League. During this period, the tier of gods suddenly began to explode. Just as the transcendents who possessed the tear of God feared, the secret medicine that was clearly heaven-defying was ultimately reduced to a common item that everyone had a bottle of. They gritted their teeth and swallowed the tear of God, or else they would not have been able to defeat their opponent. At present, the challengers and the challenged appeared one after another as if they were looking at flowers on horseback. But when he saw those who were 2 or 3 levels lower suddenly having their strength increase one after another, Fire Cloud Evil God could not help but frown. He even suspected that this was some sort of scheme. Otherwise, why would so many transcendent organizations have that mysterious medicine that could increase a person's strength? It would make sense if only 1 or 2 people had it, who did not have a trump card. But with everyone having one, could it be that this thing could be sold in bulk? But what about the purchasing channels? And according to Fire Cloud Evil God's observations, he clearly found that those who had their strength increase did not seem to be affected at all when their strength regressed to its original level. No matter if it was spirit, chi, or spirit, there was no loss. At this moment, he understood that Nangong Do and Taoist solitary clouds fainting was not because of the secret medicine, but why did this secret medicine only appear in these transcendent organizations that were 2 or 3 levels lower? He secretly asked Baijia, Chichi Kamaya, and even discussed with the leaders of the 4 spiritual clans. They did not know about the existence of this secret medicine. It feels like there's an invisible hand that's quietly pulling the strings of this competition. At this time, Fire Cloud Evil God's brows were knitted together as he muttered to himself, Master Long, what do you think of this matter? He subconsciously looked over, only to see Kelowna's Shinryu lowering his head and sending a message on his phone, as if he did not hear what Fire Cloud Evil God said just now. Lord Long? What did you say? Kelowna's Shinryu turned around. What do you mean, what do I think? It's nothing. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head, and then glanced at the screen of Shinryu's phone. It was actually an anti-peeping screen? Old man, what are you looking at? Kelowna's Shinryu raised his voice, as if someone had stepped on his tail. Nothing. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head again, and thought for a moment. Lord Long, it looks like this competition is about to enter the 3rd stage. Those who are really strong should be going up soon. I hope you can be more tolerant of the ordinary people present. Don't bother me if there's nothing, Long Shirua said impatiently. Fire Cloud Evil God smiled bitterly. He knew that Kelowna's Shinryu would not leave them alone. Even if the woman who claimed to be Shinryu's godmother was not in the stands of the media area, with Long Shirua's temperament, he would never leave the ordinary people alone. At this moment, Fire Cloud Evil God could not help but exclaim in surprise. There were very few things in this world that could surprise Fire Cloud Evil God. At this moment, Kelowna's Shinryu, who was sending a message, could not help but look up. In a flash, she saw what surprised Fire Cloud Evil God. It was a woman with a mask on her face, and at the same time, wearing a white training suit. Kelowna's Shinryu could not help but exclaim in surprise at this time. Fire Cloud Evil God's face turned serious. Lord Long, did you see something? Yes. Kelowna's Shinryu nodded at this time, and then said very seriously and with a bit of jealousy, This woman and you are wearing the same couple's outfit? How could an old man like you find a girlfriend? It's not fair. What the hell is in your head, you old man? Even if you are an old virgin for thousands of years, you are still a Kelowna's Shinryu. Don't act like a resentful woman, okay? Cough cough cough. I don't know this girl. Fire Cloud Evil God could not help but cough a few times, and quickly said, What I mean is, this girl is not simple. I'm afraid she is not a simple warrior. But among the famous and talented warriors of Kelowna, I can't remember any information about this girl. In the Divine Great Land, the Xianyuan Palace was basically the only martial artist left. Apart from the Xianyuan Palace, The gap in martial artists was much more severe than the Tao sect during the revival of Qi. The fire cloud evil god was an anomaly. He was wild, and the wild kind at that. But there was only one fire cloud evil god in Kelowna, so Xianyuan Palace was still the holy land of warriors. But Xianyuan Palace's martial arts inheritance had never been passed down to outsiders. This woman. Kelowna's Shinryu could not help but seriously look at the masked woman in white exercise clothes on the stage. Could it be? Fire Cloud Evil God quietly stretched his neck a little. Kelowna's Shinryu said seriously, "Is she really not your girlfriend?" "Lord Long, don't be ridiculous." Kelowna's Shinryu shook his head at this time and said suddenly, "She should be a dead person, but she is still here. Maybe there is something on her that saved her life. What's this woman's name?" Fire Cloud Evil God waved his hand and grabbed a piece of information. After glancing at it, he frowned and said, "Only her name, no surname. Chuyang." Chuyang? Kelowna's Shinryu was stunned subconsciously. She suddenly remembered the question Mo Xiaofei asked her when she came out from the hotel where young Master Tantalizing Wolf stayed. "Master, do you know Chuyang?" Was little Fei referring to this? Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't help but ponder at this time. "Yes, Chuyang." Fire Cloud Evil God nodded. "She represents the Tao Sect Association, not the various Tao sects, but directly under the name of the Tao Sect Association. A mysterious warrior actually uses the name of the Tao Sect Association." While they were talking, the masked woman in white exercise clothes went up the stage and directly attacked a burly boxer who looked like a giant bear. The boxer was over 2 meters tall, with distinct muscles all over his body. It was as if his body had been polished into a steel giant. He came from the highlands of Siberia, where he was from a mysterious and extremely famous devil training camp. However, facing such a strong opponent, the masked woman in white exercise clothes, who was less than 1/3 of the opponent's body, was as weak as a child. However, to everyone's surprise, the masked woman also threw out a punch when facing this terrifying opponent's iron fist. Bang! Loud sound. The sound was so loud like a sonic boom. The air waves rolled, and the simple pressure of the fist turned into a strong wind, even blowing to the 8 grandstands. The boxer from the devil training camp directly broke his arm under the punch of the masked woman, and his body flew out, smashing into the guardrail of the grandstand. Finally, he rolled his eyes and fainted. "This is..." Fire Cloud Evil God was stunned. "What fist art, Emperor's martial arts?" Chichi Kamaya put down the teacup in his hand, frowned, and muttered to himself, "Who is this girl? Chuyang? I seem to have heard this name somewhere." Chuyang. 100 Calamity Taoist opened his eyes at this time, as if he was immersed in some memories. Emperor Shocking Fist. On the grandstand, Mr. Song's eyes suddenly narrowed. Only the first emperor could learn this martial art. How could it appear on this woman? "Gong Fanxing, where are you?" "I'm here. Go and meet this mysterious woman." ######PS 1/1. Chapter 2014. That woman. On the stand, Mo Xiaofei had a strange and inexplicable feeling in his heart since the masked woman Chuyang came to the stage. An inexplicable sense of closeness made Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but take a few more glances at Chuyang. In fact, this strange feeling had already existed when Mo Xiaofei met Chuyang for the first time at Song Dynasty Hotel. In fact, he could see through the mask on Chuyang's face. The ability to see through was just a piece of cake for Mo Xiaofei at this stage. But he didn't do so. He was a person with righteousness and belief, so he would resist this kind of evil thoughts from the bottom of his heart. "Brother, do you know this woman?" Zhuifeng asked suddenly. "I've met her once." Mo Xiaofei thought for a while. "She's from Taoism?" "I think so. I'm not sure and I'm not familiar with her. I just feel like I know her. I can't explain this feeling for the time being." Zhuifeng's face was full of question marks. But Juefeng chose not to ask at this time, because he found one thing, that was, he had seen the punch of this woman named Chu Yang. Or, he had seen something similar. When he was on Mount Tai, his elder brother was possessed by a ghost and became different. At that time, his elder brother had made a similar punch. Moreover, at that time, his big brother had also taught him this fist technique. Now, Windchaser also knew this fist technique. When he was receiving the inheritance of the greedy wolf in the Highland Temple, he would practice this fist technique from time to time, but he could not grasp the key points. He could also make this punch with great power. However, the problem was that even though the power was great, there was no way to display the kind of power that Mo Xiaofei had displayed back then, where he could dominate the world. But Juefeng once again experienced this feeling from this mysterious woman named Chu Yang. Was this woman related to the ghost that possessed his elder brother? No, he couldn't let his elder brother be possessed by the ghost. Juefeng had always been the type of person who would do whatever he thought of. Although he had grown up a lot during this time, his temperament was still as young as before. He stood up directly after making a ruckus. "Star Monarch, what are you going to do?" Seeing this, Purple Star quickly asked. Juefeng said, "We don't have a single bead now. The beads given by Fire Cloud, evil god, at the beginning weren't ours either. I'm going down to get a bead." At this time, Chu Yang was still on the stage. She was fighting in the name of the Tao Sect Association. At this time, there were only 3 beads under the name of Tao Sect Association. Chu Yang automatically became the party to be challenged. It's rare for Lord Tai Bai Jinxing to have such ambition. It's really the fortune of our race. But Purple Star nodded solemnly at this time and then said, "This is the Tao Sect Association's bead. If we directly snatch it from the hands of the Tao Sect Association, it will deepen the conflict between the Taoists and demons in Kelowna. It's really unwise. We should target the transcendent teams outside of Kelowna. Now that the transcendent world has arrived, the Taoists and demons in Kelowna should unite against the external forces." This. Juefeng frowned directly. "Okay, I was too impulsive." Although the young man's temperament was still a little heavy, he was not ignorant of the overall situation. Purple Star's words made him speechless, and he could only give up resentfully. In fact, the Taoists and demons in Kelowna had been deliberately avoiding direct battles. Even after Lancelot won 3 battles and entered the challenge situation, they had been silently adhering to this rule. Now, in addition to the Demon Race Alliance being given a bead at the beginning, the 4 spirit clans had also obtained 1 or 2 beads in the subsequent battles and challenges. If these beads were regarded as the gold medals of a certain world sports event, the number of gold medals in Kelowna was already far ahead. Someone is going to challenge her. It's also a woman. Mo Xiaofei suddenly interrupted Juefeng and Purple Star's conversation at this time. On the martial arts stage, a beautiful woman in casual clothes slowly walked up the stage with a charming smile on her face at this time. "I'm Gong Fanxing from the Anata sect. Please enlighten me," the charming woman on the stage said with a light smile. Gong Fanxing? When Chichi Kamaya heard this name, he was stunned at first. Then, he frowned and subconsciously looked at Ghost Baby beside him. "Is it the demoness who harmed the Central Plains 500 years ago, Gong Fanxing? I haven't fought with her, so I don't know." Ghost Baby shook his head. Chichi Kamaya frowned and didn't say anything. If it was really the demoness 500 years ago, then it was related to a secret of the Xianyuan Palace. In fact, the Gongsun clan of the Qian tribe of the Xianyuan Palace had not only one genius, Gongsun Xiu. In Gongsun Xiu's era, there was also another talented Gongsun clan disciple. That person was called Gongsun Wu. Gongsun Wu was not much worse than Gongsun Xiu, but he had never been recognized by the Gongsun clan. First, Gongsun Wu almost cultivated the devil art. Second, Emperor Xuanyuan's atavistic bloodline only appeared in Gongsun Xiu. In the palace, except for the legitimate princess, Gongsun Shiyu was the only one who could touch the sword chi of Xianyuan of the 9 provinces. Naturally, he was regarded as the treasure of the Gongsun clan. It wasn't that the Gongsun clan didn't value Gongsun Wua, but as the saying went, a mountain couldn't accommodate 2 tigers. Gongsun Wua was a proud man, so he always felt inferior when facing Gongsun Shiyu, who was equally outstanding or even more outstanding than him. Later, Gongsun Wua suddenly betrayed the Xianyuan palace one day, and soon after, the news that Gongsun Wua was with a demoness came out. The Xianyuan palace sent many golden sword warriors to capture Gongsun Wua, but after a while, Gongsun Wua and the demoness Gong Fanxing both disappeared. It was said that before they disappeared, something happened between them and a sword immortal, and that sword immortal also mysteriously disappeared after that. In the past hundreds of years, the Xianyuan palace didn't give up searching, but there was still no news. Tai Bai of Kelowna, Green Lotus Sword Immortal. I haven't seen this person for a long time. Chichi Kamaya suddenly sighed and said, "It's a pity that such a talented hero disappeared." On the martial arts stage, the mysterious woman Chu Yang was looking at Gong Fanxing on the stage. They didn't start fighting immediately. They had been staring at each other for more than a minute. Fire Cloud Evil God didn't belong to that era, so he didn't know Gong Fanxing. He just occasionally chatted with those old guys and heard about some legends of the ancient masters of Kelowna. In fact, Fire Cloud Evil God was born in the Age of Turmoil at the end of the Ming Dynasty. He lived through the whole Qing Dynasty, and then came to the current Xian country. Calculating the time, Fire Cloud Evil God was only about 300 years old. In the cultivation world, people who were about 300 years old could only be regarded as middle-aged, and they were still young. Therefore, the Xianyuan palace thought that Fire Cloud Evil God was a wild and barbaric guy, which was completely illogical. Gong Fanxing, where have I heard this name before? Even though he couldn't recall it at the moment, Gong Fanxing's extraordinary cultivation was like an incandescent lamp in the night in the eyes of Fire Cloud Evil God, who was also a martial artist. Moreover, it was the kind of light bulb that could break 10,000 watts. Good! Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly slapped his thigh. I didn't expect that other than the Xianyuan Palace, Kelowna would have 2 such outstanding martial artists. And they are both female martial artists. Kelowna's martial artists are finally going to raise their heads. Stop fooling around. Shinryu of Kelowna suddenly said, "Let's not talk about how Chu Yang is under the name of the Dao Association. Didn't you hear what Gong Fanxing said? True Dao. That's Tai Bai's orthodoxy, and it's still under the name of the Dao Association." Fire Cloud Evil God was currently immersed in the passion of Kelowna's martial artists, who were constantly striving to improve themselves, passing down the torch, and had the hope of rising up. How could he listen to that? He immediately snorted, "So what if it's Tai Bai's orthodoxy?" It's said that the Green Lotus Sword deity also entered the path of martial arts. Strictly speaking, he was first a swordsman, then a sword deity. His descendants are naturally considered to be part of the martial arts lineage. After rounding up, "Am I still your ancestor?" Long Shirua sneered disdainfully. "Strictly speaking, you are indeed the ancestor of all of us," Fire Cloud Evil God said in a serious tone. "You motherf ****, Shinryu of Kelowna cursed. As for Gong Fanxing, who was on the stage, Long Shirua didn't pay much attention to her after a few glances. She had actually heard of this name before. She was the female devil who had once harmed the martial arts world of Kelowna hundreds of years ago. However, Gong Fanxing and Gongsun Wua had done evil together, and the Xianyuan Palace had already sent out the Golden Sword Warrior, so she was too lazy to do anything. The ancient Kelowna was much more troublesome than the modern one. There were too many demons, ghosts, and unruly people. She was busy putting out fires everywhere. But, is it really this female devil? Shinryu of Kelowna couldn't help but murmur. On the stage, Gong Fanqing had been staring at each other for a long time, but she still couldn't find any flaws in the masked woman, Chu Yang. She couldn't help but marvel at her opponent's brilliance. At this time, Chu Yang said with a trace of relief, "Finally, the martial arts road of Kelowna is not interrupted. Among the young warriors, you are very good. Little girl, don't be afraid of biting your tongue." Gong Fanqing only felt a little funny. She knew what era she was from. But even in her era, no one dared to talk to her in such a tone. It seemed that the name of the female devil of Kelowna had been forgotten for too long. Gong Fanqing didn't blame anyone. After all, she and Gong Sunhua were trapped in the Penglai treasure house back then. In the past hundreds of years, the world of Kelowna had changed. "I didn't intend to experience the Tao, demon, and martial Tao of the divine land so soon," Chu Yang said at this time. "However, since you are on the stage, show me your moves. Let me see the development of the martial arts of Kelowna. Then I'll show you the real ancient martial arts." Gong Fanqing chuckled. Her figure flashed in an instant, directly grabbing the veil on Chu Yang's face. She was qualified to say that. The martial arts road of Kelowna was quite declining. Only a little was left. Fire Cloud Evil God wanted to pick it up these years, but one person couldn't save the whole martial arts world. There were not many people who were willing to practice martial arts, and those who were willing to practice martial arts either missed the golden period or couldn't reach a high level because of the serious pollution of their bodies. Compared with the modern martial arts, the martial arts of hundreds of years ago could be regarded as ancient martial arts. Gong Fanqing's own martial arts skills were inherited from an even more ancient era. In a split second, Gong Fanqing's palm turned into thousands of shadows in front of Chu Yang. However, these countless shadows were unable to touch the corner of Chu Yang's clothes. Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be surprised. Although she didn't use her full strength, this move of the flowing cloud scattering hands could be said to be the peak of martial arts in her era. It was not easy to dodge. "Your palm technique is not bad," Chu Yang said slowly in an affirmative tone as she dodged easily. "Your basic skills are also not bad. The timing and angle of your move are not bad. It's a pity that your mentality is not right." "What?" Gong Fanqing was stunned. While she was stunned, Chu Yang gently pushed out a palm. In a split second, this palm gave Gong Fanqing a feeling of covering the sky and earth. The palm enlarged infinitely like a huge wall. She actually had a feeling that she couldn't dodge it. Under the stimulation of instinct, Gong Fanqing instantly retracted her flowing cloud scattering hands. She took 3 steps back and finally stopped when she reached the edge of the martial arts stage. Chu Yang's palm did not completely push out in the end. She naturally stopped. She could retract and withdraw her palm at will. Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be silent. Her eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. She frowned and said, "You said that my mentality is not right, where is it wrong?" Chu Yang said indifferently, "Don't look down on the people of the world. Even if you don't know who your opponent is, you still have to treat them as equals. I'm not like what you think. I'm just a proud and arrogant girl. If you don't take back your contempt, you will suffer." Gong Fanqing's frown deepened. She quietly glanced at the grandstand beside her. Her gaze directly fell on Mr. Song, but she only saw Mr. Song lightly nodding his head at this time. Gong Fanqing slowly exhaled. After adjusting her breath, she brazenly struck out her palm again. This palm contained the power of the 28 constellations of the 4 divisions. It was as if it was formed by nature. When the palm struck out, it gave people a feeling that there was no way to retreat and no way to avoid it. On the grandstand, Fire Cloud Evil God directly praised, "Good palm technique." At this time, Chu Yang was motionless. When the countless palm strikes were about to hit her body, Chu Yang's figure flashed. But when her figure reappeared in front of everyone's eyes, it was a simple posture of a horse stance and a fist strike. The palm strikes of the 28 constellations of the 4 divisions disappeared. Only a gust of wind blew, slowly sweeping across everyone's faces. At this time, Gong Fanqing's face was pale. She covered her shoulder and then vomited a mouthful of blood. What's this fist technique? She vomited another mouthful of blood. Chu Yang slowly withdrew her fist. Basic fist technique. Gong Fanqing opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but she didn't know what to say in the end. Didn't you just say not to look down on people in the world? What the F***ck is this double-standard dog? Wugong Mountain is a good place, there's… Oh, this fist is so powerful. Momo couldn't help praising at this moment. But the senior didn't seem to hear it. Boss Luo was now looking at the Li grandstand diagonally ahead. Momo subconsciously followed the senior's gaze but didn't see anything special. He couldn't help but feel confused. Senior, what's the matter? Ask if you don't understand. Nothing. Boss Luo said casually, just one more spectator. Spectator? Momo couldn't help being stunned. He looked at the Li grandstand again, but still didn't find anything special. If there was anything special, it was probably a guy who was slowly walking to the higher part of the grandstand. It seemed to be a very ordinary man. His hair was casually tied up, wearing a white shirt, round glasses and white glove. This chapter ends. Chapter 2015. On the stage, Gong Fanqing was seriously injured and knew that she was not fit to fight anymore. She was straightforward and walked out of the martial arts stage without saying a word. Wait! What? Are you going to taunt me? Gong Fanqing looked back at Chu Yang. Chu Yang shook her head and said indifferently, You have too many distracting thoughts in your mind. With your talent, you should not have reached this level. Gong Fanqing frowned and sneered, I'm a devil, a collection of desires. I don't have many distracting thoughts. What kind of devil am I? Chu Yang said slowly, Even a devil can be very strong at its peak. What kind of devil are you? At this moment, Gong Fanqing's spirit was shaken. In her spiritual world, there seemed to be a sound of thunder in a drought. She lowered her head, then immediately raised her head, saying that she had learned something, and then directly left the stage. At this time, Chu Yang was still standing on the stage. It seemed that she did not intend to come down. However, there were fewer and fewer transcendents who wanted to fight at this point in the competition. On the flat floor of the top floor of the Li stage, Pulin held the iron railing of the stairs and slowly climbed up. He had been here for some time. The scenery on the way was good. There was a flower field nearby. The flowers there were good. He stayed for a while, so he missed the beginning of the Strength Conference. He did not participate in the conference in the name of any region. The Kelowna administration did not have any information about him. Since he was born, he did not have a fixed residence and did not have any subordinate. And he did not have much contact with the transcendents in the world. He planned to continue his life like this. At this time, he climbed up the flat floor and looked down. He could see the whole scene of the Strength Conference, but it was not that there was no one here. On the flat floor, there were 5 agents from the Kelowna administration. They were standing guard here, in case something unexpected happened. However, when Pu Lin climbed up obediently, it was as if the 5 agents from the administration hadn't seen him. They didn't move at all. From afar, the 5 investigators looked like soldiers guarding their posts, but the reality was that, is he frozen in place? Pulin stood behind one of the agents and patted his shoulder. It was easy to tell if they were really on guard duty or if they were in a state where they couldn't move. Teacher Pulin couldn't help but shake his head, but suddenly said casually, Is there a need to do this? If you want to watch the competition, you can watch it anywhere. Isn't it more comfortable to sit in the stands than to stand here? As for the problem of being discovered, I don't think you will be discovered, right? I prefer a quiet place. Besides, I don't mean to hurt them. A young girl's voice slowly floated into Pulin's ears. Why was it a young girl's voice? Because this was a beautiful voice that would make one think of all young girls. Teacher Pulin turned his head. On the railing of the flat floor, there was a young girl with red hair. Red hair. The girl was wearing a JK uniform. Her legs that were wrapped in thin black stockings were simply crossed. She was like a girl who walked out of a 2D fantasy anime. Pu Lin turned his head to the side and sized him up. He thought for a while and said, "How should I address you? The Hermit of the Secret Society." Rias. The red-haired girl said casually, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Recorder Candidate." Pu Lin shook his head and said, "I remember, I didn't promise you to be the recorder of the Secret Society. I'm here for this." The red-haired girl. Rias smiled and said, "The hermit who was in charge of this subworld record and contacted you has retired. I'll take over his job for now." Pu Lin honestly couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "You guys still talk about retirement?" Rias flipped her hair and said, "If you die, doesn't that mean you're retired? Retired forever?" Pu Lin honestly couldn't help but stare blankly. Soon after, he shook his head. He didn't want to delve into this issue. At most, they had only met once with that hidden cultivator who had come into contact with him on behalf of the secret society. They weren't even friends. Furthermore, in Pu Lin's honest opinion, it was a rather troublesome matter to ask about these matters. "I refuse." At this moment, Teacher Pu Lin suddenly said, "A formal refusal." The red-haired girl asked curiously, "Why?" "You only need to record everything that happens in this subworld. You don't need to get involved. Plus, you can get a lot of information from other subworlds. Becoming a recorder, a brand new door will open in front of you." "I'm afraid of trouble." Teacher Pu Lin shook his head. Shortly after, he smiled and said, "Moreover, I'm not very good at writing diaries. Besides, as far as I know, this world already has a scribe who's still in office. Every subworld has at least 2 recorders. That's our rule," the red-haired girl said casually. The red-haired girl said casually, "Moreover, the person you're talking about is currently in this venue." The red-haired girl reached out her finger and pointed. "Oh." Teacher Pu Lin seemed a little curious and subconsciously looked over. He still didn't know what the secret society's criteria for selecting a recorder, so he naturally didn't know what kind of person the other recorder was. But what he saw was a guy with a mask over his head. He couldn't even see his face, let alone know who he was. "You see, it's really a simple job." Rias smiled. "He's been enjoying it, and he's been doing very well all this while. We've already decided to promote him. But if you decide to refuse to be a recorder, then he might have to continue for a while. Because we don't want a blank in history." Teacher Pu Lin couldn't help but say with interest, "I don't seem to know this current Mr. Scribe. Wanting me to take over his position for the sake of his promotion sounds a little like bullying." "You don't want to leave this world?" the red-haired girl suddenly said. "If you take over and replace him, he will leave this world. Then the next one to take you out of this world will probably be him." "Why should I leave this world?" Pu Lin shook his head. "You might think about it in the future." "Then we'll talk about it in the future," Pu Lin said calmly. "It's very tiring to think about the future now." The red-haired girl jumped down from the railing. Her dress was anti-gravity. Pu Lin realized that he didn't see anything. It was a bit of a pity. "We won't force you." Rias was very calm. "Since you've chosen to refuse, then I won't continue to dwell on this matter. Plus, you were chosen by the previous hermit, not me. Maybe you're not the most suitable one for me, but, according to the rules, I'll erase all your memories of the secret society." Rias slowly raised her hand. "I heard that you've inherited the position of Pluto, but now it seems that you've lost the power of death. My job will probably be a lot easier. I think this memory is quite interesting." Pu Lin shook his head. "It'll be a pity to erase it, but I'm not willing to accept this job." "What should I do?" "Prince Pu Lin," Rias said calmly. "Please don't make it difficult for me. After all, I've just taken over. I don't want anything bad to happen. Don't worry, other than the memory of the secret society, I won't touch anything else. Poulin smiled honestly but slyly. How about we make a deal? I'll recommend you a very suitable candidate to be the recorder, and you'll let me keep this memory. Of course, you can use whatever you think is safe to make me promise not to reveal any information about you. Your candidate. Rias's hand stopped moving as if she was thinking about this matter. Poulin smiled. It's one of my students. Don't worry, he's naturally suited for this kind of thing. Your student. Rias looked at Poulin from head to toe. The suspicion in her eyes was very obvious. At this moment, Teacher Poulin nodded solemnly and said, Am I really a teacher? Rias pondered for a moment. There was no problem with being the recorder of Subworld 003, but the hermit who was in charge of this subworld's recorder died in an accident, and Rias was forced to take over. In fact, she didn't even have the experience of being a hermit. That's right, she was promoted as a recorder, and not too long ago. The subworld she was originally in, among the many subworlds, was the one with a very low number. But that didn't mean that the civilization of the subworld with a lower number was worse than the subworld with a higher number. The subworld she was in as a recorder was a world that used magic, and the modern human civilization was similar to this subworld. However, in her subworld, humans, gods, and demons all lived together, and the entire subworld was slowly moving forward under the supervision of a complete war chess system. Because she had just been promoted, and because it was her first time handling affairs as a hermit, Rias's goal was to do her best to be the recorder of Subworld 003. After the previous one died in an accident, there was a lot of information about the recorder candidate, Mr. Poulin, Prince Poulin. So, when Rias arrived in this subworld, she directly called out to Poulin. As for running into Mr. Poulin at this power conference, it could be considered an accident. Naturally, Rias was not familiar with Subworld 003, so the moment she landed, she immediately set the position of another scribe who was in service. She originally planned to greet the current recorder first and get to know him before preparing to meet with Mr. Poulin. But since she ran into Mr. Poulin at this conference, she might as well talk to Poulin first. Because, while Mr. Poulin was said to be the backup chosen by the previous hermit, Mr. Poulin did not immediately agree. So, once Mr. Poulin agreed, he would become the first recorder under Rias. This was a little special in the secret society, so she wanted to handle it carefully. What do you think? Mr. Poulin said slowly. About my suggestion? Rias said calmly. Where is the candidate you recommended? Is he here as well? Mr. Poulin suddenly blinked and said, Your Excellency Rias, how long have you been here? Rias did not hide anything and said directly, The specific time should be this morning in this subworld. I originally planned to arrive before the Transcendent Summit, but it's a little difficult to pinpoint the specific time of a subworld in a dimensional crack, so I'm a few days late. Mr. Poulin blinked and said, You know about the Transcendent Summit? It should be related to the diary given to you by the current recorder? Rias nodded. The recorder's diary will automatically update every once in a while. The diary for these few days has not been updated yet. Is there a problem? No. Mr. Poulin smiled and said, I'm just a little curious if the information in this area is updated instantly. Rias looked at Mr. Poulin in confusion and frowned. What does this have to do with the person you want to recommend? Nothing. Teacher Poulin said sternly. It's just my personal curiosity. The student I recommended is more or less the same as me. He's the type who hides in the extraordinary world and doesn't like to appear in front of others, so there shouldn't be much information about him in the records of the current recorder. Rias did not know why, but she suddenly had a very strange feeling. She felt that there was something wrong with Mr. Poulin's recommendation this time. However, she was unable to sense where this trace of uneasiness had come from. Perhaps she should have refused and directly erased the memories of Teacher Poulin who'd already refused. After that, she should have started to select her own scribe. However, at this moment, Teacher Pu Lin revealed a sincere appearance of punching. She was also a little worried about this guy who once had the status of the king of hell. The previous reclusive monk who died unexpectedly left her with a hot potato, choosing such a scary guy. "You haven't told me where the person you recommended is," Rias asked directly. "No rush." Mr. Poulin smiled and said, "This student of mine should also be in this venue, but I haven't found him yet. Maybe you can help to look for him, if you don't mind." Rias frowned. She felt that this guy was doing something bad. End of chapter. Chapter 2016. The red-haired annihilator Artemis, the candidate of the original Codex, the most powerful demon king bloodline. Rias had many halos on her, but in truth, as a hermit of the secret society, she was just a newbie who had just been promoted from a scribe. Let's call her a newbie in the void dimension crevice. As a newbie in the workplace, if she wanted to make some achievements, it was basically the norm, and Miss Rias was no exception. Originally, as a hermit who had just become a hermit, she was far from being able to take over the task of recording the history of the subworlds so quickly. She had to study in the secret society, for a period of time at the very least. Then, she would have to work under the senior hermit for a period of time before she would be officially appointed and take up the post alone. This time, it could be considered a special accident. Firstly, the hermit responsible for Subworld 003 had died in an accident, and currently, Rias was the only newbie in the secret society. It had been a long time since the secret society promoted a newbie. Secondly, Rias's background was not simple. Among her ancestors, one of them had already become a hermit, and his position in the secret society was not low. Although Rias's promotion this time was suspected of opening the back door, Rias herself was strong enough to promote herself, and under the control of the big boss of the secret society, she naturally did not say anything unnecessary. So, this matter was settled. However, since Rias was just a newbie rookie, she only took over Subworld 003. Compared to a normal hermit who could be responsible for 10 to 20 subworlds' historical records, this was a bit like a preliminary examination. She had protested before, but her protest was ineffective. Subworld 003 is very special. Your previous hermit seemed to have discovered something special about this subworld, and when he wanted to report it, he suddenly died in an accident. She recalled the words that her ancestor with a high position in the secret society told her before she left this time. "We can't sort out any useful information from the work log he left behind. This information seems to have been erased. We speculate that Subworld 003 may have a bigger secret. This time, you only accepted Subworld 003, and it seems like they don't believe in your ability to work. But that's not the case, because this will allow you to focus more on finding the secret buried in Subworld 003. Other than that, it is to find the truth behind the death of your previous hermit monk. Doing this well will benefit you greatly in the future." On the league grandstand, facing Mr. Poulin's request to recommend a candidate for recorder in exchange for not erasing her memory, Rias was hesitant. She was not hesitating whether she should agree or not, but whether she should erase Mr. Poulin's memory of the secret society. It was only after Teacher Pu Lin had been confirmed as the new scribe candidate that something had happened to the previous hermit cultivator. Furthermore, each subworld would have 2 scribes. Only when a scribe retires, is promoted, or dies, would the next scribe be appointed. The previous hermit had confirmed Poulin as the new recorder, which meant that the previous recorder no longer existed. According to the information, the previous recorder's status was dead. But the work log did not record the reason for the death of the previous recorder. Rias had not thought of a way to temporarily bypass the rules of the secret society and keep Mr. Poulin's memory of the secret society, to see if he was related to the whole thing. Now that Mr. Poulin had made such a request, it was really timely. "Your Excellency Rias, What do you think of my proposal? Mr. Poulin asked again. Whether I agree or not will wait until I see the candidate you recommend, Riaz said slowly. If it is a candidate I am satisfied with, I will find a way to let you keep your memory of the secret society. Of course, I will also find a way to prevent you from revealing it. It's okay, you will be satisfied. Mr. Poulin smiled and said, My student is very nice. Everyone will like him, and you will also like him. Riaz smiled faintly and did not take it to heart. She said directly, Now, you can tell me where the person you recommended is. I said it? Mr. Poulin blinked and said, I really don't know where he is now. But, he should be in this venue. Even if he isn't, he should be nearby. Are you messing with me? Riaz's eyes turned cold. After saying so much, she almost wanted to curse. Anyway, this is not urgent, Mr. Poulin said casually. You have lost a recorder, and it is not a matter of a day or two. Now is the time of the supernatural summit of this world. This is a huge event that will affect the course of this world. Why don't you witness it yourself, Your Excellency Riaz? I think it will be more interesting than just looking at the diary submitted by another recorder. Riaz pondered for a moment before nodding. As long as I'm here, you'll stay by my side until you hand over the candidate you've recommended. I can't hand him over. Teacher Poulin shook his head. Shortly after, he said with a smile, but having a beautiful girl by my side is actually a pleasing matter. The red-haired girl sized up this scribe back up with a glance. According to the records of the previous hermit, Poulin ought to be the type that was more reserved. But the one in front of her seemed to be different from the information? The supernatural powers of this subworld have good potential. Riaz turned to look at the arena below and looked at Chuyang on the stage. She said calmly, There are quite a few good seedlings. Chuyang was still on the stage, waiting for the next challenger. She looked like she wanted to fight all the heroes in the world. Gong Fanqing had already returned to Mr. Song's side. At this moment, Wolfgang suddenly took out a small bottle and gave it to her, saying that it was a secret medicine that could heal injuries, and it was quite effective. Gong Fanqing just accepted it but did not drink it immediately. She apologized in a low voice in front of Mr. Song. I'm sorry, my lord, I lost. When you and I first met this girl at the foot of Mount Tai, we already knew that she was extraordinary. Mr. Song said expressionlessly. At that time, she saw that I was practicing the great wasteland swallowing sky scripture at a glance. At that time, I only thought that she was probably from the Xianyuan Palace's Gongsun clan, but now, it seems that she is not. Not from Xianyuan Palace? Gong Fanqing could not help but frown. Wu Wa once told me that his Shocking World Fist was derived from the Royal Shocking World Fist. But he could only practice the tyrannical path. Just now, my lord said that this girl was using the Royal Shocking World Fist. Is it not enough to prove it? This is the secret of Xianyuan Palace. How can an outsider learn it? The martial arts of Xianyuan Palace are not forbidden to be taught to outsiders. Mr. Song said calmly, according to ancient legends, other than Xianyuan Palace, there is only one other person in the world who learned this fist technique and practiced it to the peak. Who is this person? Mr. Song said seriously, the Emperor of the Ages, the first Emperor Ing Zheng. First Emperor. Gong Fanqing was shocked. She knew this lord's background. This lord was also a rare great emperor in Kelowna. But compared to the one who was called the first emperor, she was afraid that he was slightly inferior. I am indeed not as good as the first emperor, Mr. Song said expressionlessly. Even the way he addressed her changed. Gong Fanqing was immediately covered in cold sweat and quickly lowered her head, afraid that the panic in her eyes would be seen. I am not as good as him because I was not born in that era, Mr. Song said calmly. Gong Fanqing's heart trembled. Song Zhao Imperial Court, no matter what, it was still a grand dynasty in Kelowna. As the former ruler of the dynasty, this lord had the arrogance of an emperor. But since ancient times, there were no great emperors who did not have arrogance in their hearts. Even if they were not the founding emperors but the succeeding emperors, there were still many who were arrogant. If that's the case, could this woman be a descendant of the first emperor? Gong Fanqing quickly changed the topic. Mr. Song said, the martial arts of Xianyuan Palace were passed down to the first emperor. Later on, they were integrated by the first emperor. Part of it was used in the army and was also used to reward those who performed meritorious deeds. Part of it was kept in the imperial family and became the emperor's martial arts. This lady seems to be using the emperor's martial arts. Even if she is not the descendant of the first emperor, her origin is not shallow. I should indeed meet her personally. Gong Fanqing was shocked. My lord, are you planning to meet her personally? Mr. Song shook his head and said, not now. I don't want to expose my identity too much for now. However, before the name of Anjin Dao is known, it has already gone against the previous plan. Wolfgang, you go down later and bring back 3 pearls. Wolfgang shrugged his shoulders. With his ability, it was more or less a bit of a bully. In this world, apart from those experts at the pinnacle, there weren't many who could enter the discerning eyes of a transcendent being like him. Who do you want me to challenge? Wolfgang asked directly. Mr. Song thought for a while and said, eliminate those who have already fought, and choose a few from the masters who have not yet fought. It is useful for me to see the details of a few masters. You don't have to think about Farlier for now, right? Wolfgang smiled and said, after all, you seem to have formed an alliance. In this case, I really should think about it. Well, actually, I am a person who hates using violence. Gong Fanqing rolled her eyes and immediately sat down cross-legged to adjust her breath and heal her injuries. Chu Yang's fundamental fist just now, while beating her to the point of doubting life, had also opened up a tightly shut door for her. She had been locked up in the Penglai treasury 400 years, and her true power was earth-shattering. However, she had been confined in the sphere and could not go anywhere, nor could she fight with others. Her martial arts realm had not improved much. Strictly speaking, she was the kind of person who was biased, and her strength was seriously inconsistent with her realm. Mr. Song suddenly looked at her and then smiled. Although Gong Fanqing lost this battle, it was not a bad thing. As long as Gong Fanqing could absorb the experience of this battle, it was not impossible for her to reach a higher level in the future. The higher the strength of the people under him, the more benefits he would receive as the leader. However, did the first emperor really have descendants left in the world? The martial arts stage had been quiet for more than 10 minutes. During this period, Chu Yang had been standing there quietly with her hands down, but no one went up to challenge her. However, Chu Yang's patience was surprisingly good. She just stood there and did not step down. She had already become the stage tyrant. She just let the stage tyrant stand there like this? If no one went up to challenge her, would Kelowna Shinryu directly announce the end of the competition? After all, the rules of the competition were to stop until no one came up to challenge her. At this moment, a figure suddenly jumped onto the martial arts stage. It was a man wrapped in a black robe. Warrior! The transcendents who were suffering under Tai Bachuyang's rule almost wanted to stand up and clap, giving the warrior a salute. At this moment, seeing someone come up to the stage again, Chu Yang slowly opened her eyes, then nodded and said calmly, "Please advise." "I am not challenging you." Unexpectedly, the man in the black robe directly said, "I am challenging someone else. There is nothing else for you, go back to where you belong." Chu Yang was stunned. Many transcendents were also stunned at this moment. Then, they slapped their thighs. Damn, there is such a thing. The person on the stage did not say that she had to be knocked off the stage. She could still challenge someone else. After all, Chu Yang was participating in the competition in the name of the Tao Sect Association. She was already full of pearls, so she could only passively wait for the challenge. She was just a stage tyrant who did not step down, but she did not have the right to continue standing on the stage. Regarding this, Chu Yang could not help but frown. She suddenly looked outside the martial arts stage. Song Haoran was standing at the entrance. Song Haoran was nodding helplessly at this moment. Chu Yang did not say anything and did not turn back. She directly went down the stage and walked into the entrance. Your Highness, if you want to continue being the stage tyrant, why don't you continue to challenge others after I challenge you 3 times in a row and you lose to me 3 times? Young Master Song suddenly said, "This is a good way to earn points." Shameless. Princess Chu Yang snorted coldly. However, Song Haoran said, "Since it is an advantage, since it is a method, why not use it? Things like face are useless to me. Material benefits are what I can get. Your ancestor who wants to devour you is here," Princess Chu Yang suddenly said. Song Haoran could not help but be stunned. Then, he frowned and said, "Let's not talk about whether the person who appeared at the foot of Mount Tai that day was my ancestor. Even if it was my ancestor, I might not be willing to let him capture me to practice his evil technique." Princess Chu Yang's expression softened and she nodded. Young Master Song laughed and said, "Moreover, I am already your Highness's man. How can I be bullied by others? Won't this weaken your Highness's prestige?" Shameless. This was the most severe way to scold someone that Princess Chu Yang could think of. On the martial arts stage there was a different scene. After chasing Taiba Chu Yang away, the black-robed man's gaze looked towards a certain direction. He stretched out his hand and his finger locked onto a target in the crowd. "Come down. It's time to settle the grudge between you and me." Everyone looked in the direction that the black-robed man was pointing at. They realized that the person he was pointing at was the new chief of the Black Order, Lamia's. At this moment, Lamia's opened her mouth slightly. Although she was far away, with her ability, she could hear the resentment in the black-robed man's words. Lamia's could not help but fall into deep thought. Ever since she returned, other than reorganizing the Black Order, she had not offended anyone. How big of a grudge did he have to have such resentment that seemed to come from the depths of his soul? At the same time, Teacher Che Tian, who was writing in his diary, suddenly stopped writing and looked up thoughtfully. Chapter 2017. The Power Conference of the Black Order did not have any division. It was just like how it was supposed to be. In fact, ever since the Black Order failed to capture Hades in Britain, almost all the elites in the Black Order had died. In other words, apart from Lamias herself, there was no one in the Black Order who could fight. Not to mention the high-level transcendents, even the mid-level transcendents were mostly empty. Only the group of kids who were not strong enough to capture Hades were left. Other things aside, the newly appointed Dark Saintess of the Black Order was actually the tallest one among the shorter ones. She was a little girl who had not even graduated from school. However, it was difficult for outsiders to know these things. After Lamia's reorganized the Black Order, she had kept this part of the information very well hidden. However, apart from herself, there was really no one in the Black Order who could fight. As for why she had the courage to participate in this Summit Conference, and even come to the Power Conference, there was only one reason. She could fight. After being sealed in the crystal jade for so many years, the only thing she could do was to recall the past and plan how to get out of the crystal jade. The only thing she could do was to train. Thousands of years? Tens of thousands of years? With so many years of Saint Seiya training, even if she was a pig, she could still make a pig as strong as fried chicken. So she knew that she could fight. She dared not say that she was invincible, but she was no longer a pushover, except for a certain black-hearted boss. During the long years of being sealed, Lamias had always asked herself if she hated that guy who threw her into the Ragnarok, and did not care about her. The answer was obvious. It was anyone who was placed outside of history for such a long time. However, after getting out of the crystal jade, this hatred gradually faded away. If it was not for the long years of training, would she be able to achieve what she had now? Moreover, it would appear seamlessly in the original time. Just like those protagonists in Myriad Heavens. They would directly open a dungeon a second before they died, earn a lot of money and return again, and then reverse the situation. She could not. She was not a natural-born transcendent. In the past, when she was a member of the operation team in the Black Order, she only relied on the equipment that could deal with transcendent. Once she lost her equipment, she would only be a slightly stronger soldier. However, the baptism of time, only such a long baptism of time could allow her life to evolve to another level. From a certain perspective, this seemed to be fair to her. Although it was annoying, Lamias knew that even now, she didn't have the qualifications to negotiate with the boss, let alone take revenge. She couldn't see any hope at all. She was a pragmatic person, a utilitarian. She was the kind of person who could not resist if she was raped. In order to survive, she would even consider whether she should cater to the other party. In short, if she lost her life, then so be it. Everything would be in vain. But I'm still so angry. Looking at the black-robed man on the martial arts stage, Lamias had a feeling. She felt that if she was serious, she could kill this guy who pretended to be mysterious with one punch. Therefore, after Lamias was challenged, she didn't even think about it and directly stepped down. There weren't so many fancy special effects, just a slight jump. She landed on the ground. She tilted her head and looked at the black-robed man in front of her. This guy really hates me. She could feel the hateful aura that he was emitting, as well as his will to fight. That's right, it was the standard power of the Saint Seiyas in the Holy Realm, fighting spirit. But according to the information that Lamias collected from the Socius God clan behind the scenes, there should be no more Saint Seiyas in this world. As for the way to practice fighting spirit, it was even more so cut off. Do I know you? Lamias thought for a while. She couldn't think of anything, so she asked directly. You know me. Of course you know me. How can you not know me? The black-robed man's extremely suppressed voice already made people uncomfortable. It seemed to be particularly sharp. Oh, if you say you know me, then so be it. Lamias held her waist with one hand and said lazily, Can we start the challenge? Of course. The black-robed man said hatefully like a beast, You don't know how long I've waited for this day. I even thought I'll never see this day. But I finally waited. In the world of the dead, I experienced a lot of suffering. Lamias, I'll never forget what you did to me. He roared to the sky. The black robe on the black-robed man's body instantly exploded, and what appeared in everyone's line of sight was his well-built body. However, on this well-built body, there were terrifying crisscrossing scars that looked like spider webs. The man's face was a little pale, but he had a rather handsome face. But on his handsome cheek, there was a centipede-like scar that covered half of his face. You! Lamias couldn't help being startled at this time. Have you finally recognized me? Lamias. The black-robed man's eyes were red at this time. Lamias shook her head. No, I just think you look so ugly. Ah! The black-robed man suddenly roared, and his body broke out a very powerful fluctuation. It's you! It's all because of you. It's you who ruined my life. It's you who ruined everything for me. It's all because of you. Lamias. Lamias frowned. She did use the name Lamias, during the twilight of the gods. The black-robed man clenched his fists, and the fluctuation released from his body increased a little. At the same time, the man's neck suddenly floated up, and instantly shot out a silver-gray light. Amidst the radiance, a huge silver-gray box slowly appeared. Oh! Lamias subconsciously exclaimed, Holy cloth! Even though it was already thousands of years ago, as the standard of the strong in that era, the holy cloth had a very deep impression in Lamias's memory. Yes, holy cloth. The black-robed man grinned at this time. Aquila's holy cloth. But in order to find you, in order to leave that damn world of the dead, It's no longer Athena's holy cloth. It's now completely my holy cloth. Death holy cloth. As he said, the box in the silver-gray light opened instantly, and the parts of the holy cloth with a strong aura of death and hatred quickly attached to the black-robed man's body. Aquila! Aquila! Aquila? Lamia's puzzled eyes suddenly became clear, and then, as if she was enlightened, she finally found a trace of impression in the depths of her memory and blurted out, "You're Satyr? Satyr of the Aquila Saint Seiya? You're actually not dead?" "I'm not dead. But it's worse than death." The black-robed man wearing the death-holy cloth, the satyr in Lamia's mouth, now dragged his heavy footsteps toward Lamia's. "Do you know what kind of humiliation I've suffered because of you? Do you know that because of you, I've even lost my dignity as a man? Do you know that if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have fallen into the world of the dead? It's all because of you." Satyr roared at this time, and at this time black gas was emitted from his body, which evolved into the power of black fighting spirit. And this black fighting spirit, with the support of the death-holy cloth, increased by several times again. "Die, Lamia's." Finally, Satyr's hands clenched into claws, and his whole body seemed to have transformed into a withered giant eagle flying out from the depths of death. Death Eagle God Claw. The humongous combat intent giant claw finally had a trace of the momentum of the previous few exciting challenges. This was indeed a powerful attack. However, facing this powerful attack, the new chief of the Black Order simply threw out a punch. The fist directly broke through the dual intent giant claw, and directly smashed into the center of Satyr's face. Then, the dual intent giant claw instantly shattered, and Satyr's entire body flew backwards like a kite with a broken string. The death-holy cloth on his body became dim, and in the middle of flying out, it fell off from his body. In the end, Satyr's body rolled to the edge of the arena, but he almost fell. However, his face was punched in the middle, and Satyr's nose was already twisted, and many of his teeth were also knocked out. He didn't faint directly, but his eyes became empty and lifeless. Why, if one looked closely, one could even see that this man who went up on stage with hatred was now tearing up. Did I hit him too hard? Lamias couldn't help but frown, and walked directly to Satyr, who was holding his head and crying at the edge of the arena, and looked at him. "You want to humiliate me? You still want to humiliate me? Haven't you humiliated me enough? I didn't do anything to you. I don't remember clearly." Lamia shook her head. "It's too long, you'd better say it yourself." With that, Lamia slowly stretched out her hand. In her palm, a flash suddenly flashed, and she softly said, "Phantom, Devil's Fist." The flash flashed out, and directly sank into Satyr's forehead. In an instant, Satyr's whole body became stiff, but he still had tears on his face, which was very strange. At this time, Lamias directly said, "Now you can tell me what happened to you. And how did you survive until now?" That twilight of the gods finally ended with the appearance of the ultimate weapon, Yama. The sky, the earth, and the underworld of the entire ancient Greek divine system were completely broken, and then it led to the invasion of a terrible creature in the void, which almost destroyed everything. Lamias originally thought that except for herself, all the people of that era had died, but the appearance of Satyr surprised her. She had an urgent feeling that she wanted to know everything that happened to Satyr, even though the memory of Satyr in her memory was still very vague. It was too long ago, and she felt that she could still remember that this guy was a Saint Seiya of Aquila, which was very manly. So, under the effect of Phantom Devil's Fist, which had the ability to control the mind, Satyr began to slowly narrate his miserable life. And with Satyr's narration, the blurry memory in Lamias's memory gradually became clear. She finally remembered what she had done. At that time, when she was thrown into the human world of the battlefield of the Twilight of the Gods, Lamias turned into Lamias, and stayed in the camp of the allied forces of the sanctuary as a female warrior. At that time, in order to go to the sanctuary, she had to trick Satyr, Of course, if this guy was not so flirtatious, he probably would not have fallen into the trap so easily. But the bad thing was that this was the place. Of course, Lamias would not directly fight with Satyr on the same bed. Instead, another female warrior in the female warrior camp took her place. Later, Lamias succeeded in obtaining the qualification to go to the sanctuary and left the warrior camp. As for Satyr, when she left the camp, she directly forgot about him. But what she did not expect was that not long after she left the camp for the sanctuary, this matter was exposed. Satyr finally found that the person he slept with was not Lamias, but the ugliest female warrior in the camp, and it was multiple times. A burst of grief and indignation directly crushed Satyr's reason. But he did not expect that the thing that made Satyr collapse was still after that. It was said that the female warrior was really infatuated with Satyr. When the matter was exposed and she was scolded and even injured by Satyr, she still did not change her mind, and even became more and more intense, and finally even to the extent of morbidity. She spread the matter between herself and Satyr everywhere, and even claimed that she was pregnant with Satyr's flesh and blood. Once this matter was publicized, regardless of whether it was true or not, Satyr's reputation as a promising Saint Seiya of Aquila had been damaged in the warrior camp. The furious Satyr directly went to the female warrior to reason, but unexpectedly fell into the female warrior's trap, and fell to the ground with poison. For the first time, when Satyr was awake, this female warrior crazily took possession of this promising young Saint Seiya, and not as a substitute for Lamias, and then quietly hid afterwards. Of course, if it was only like this, it would not make this Saint Seiya hate Lamias so much. A shocking thing happened. After the female warrior crazily took possession of Satyr, she actually dragged Satyr out, and in front of the whole camp, directly cut off Satyr's dignity as a man, and directly stuffed it into her mouth, chewing and swallowing it. The female warrior said that from now on, Satyr could only belong to her, and then went crazy. Although Satyr was rescued later, his spirit was greatly damaged. After waking up, he seemed to have gone crazy, and actually slaughtered the whole warrior camp, and then disappeared without a trace. Later, the battlefield of the gods ushered in the final dusk, and the gods' kingdom was broken. Countless creatures were either swallowed by the monsters in the void, or fell into the turbulence between the cracks. At this time, Satyr was also pulled into a place called the world of the dead, by the turbulence of space. There were very few humans in that world, and they were all terrifying demons who followed this primitive instinct. Satyr had even fallen into the hands of a lord who was fond of men. Due to his handsome appearance and the flaws of his body, he had become the lord's exclusive slave for several decades. After a few years, the lord had a new lover, so he directly threw Satyr into the demon's arena. Every day, he faced the test of life and death in the demon's arena. The only thing that kept him from collapsing and becoming numb was the resentment in his heart. The resentment even stained his holy garment with the breath of death, and it degenerated into the holy garment of death. Finally, after decades of gladiator career, Satyr successfully fought his way out of the arena. He escaped from the lord of the demon clan, and wandered in the world of the dead, muddle-headed. Finally, when a black uncle wizard from the subworld No. 003 summoned a demon, Satyr happened to be next to the summoned demon. He killed the demon, and then used the summoning channel to successfully reach the present world, and left the world of the dead. Then, he followed the black uncle wizard to the forbidden city where the summit meeting was held. Then, he was punched by Lamias under the power of the illusory devil emperor fist. Satyr talked about his past expressionlessly. His past was transmitted to every corner of the world through the equipment of all the major media outlets. After listening to Satyr's experience, Lamias couldn't help but be dumbfounded, and she sighed, "So miserable, so miserable." The audience in front of the screen also had the same thought at this time. They didn't know about the battlefield of the gods or the world of the dead, and it didn't matter if they didn't know about it. but they just felt that Satyr was really miserable. Chapter 2018. So miserable, above the Chien stands, Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't help but sigh. However, Fire Cloud Evil God frowned and looked at Long Shiro. Lord Long, do you understand what this person said? Are you King deaf? Kelowna's Shinryu was always hot-tempered. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head and said, what I mean is, the background of the new chief of the Black Order. Although she has only been in office for a short time, according to the intelligence sent back by the Overseas Intelligence Group, Lamia should be only 26 or 27 years old. Also, the battlefield of the Twilight of the Gods that Satyr mentioned seems to be quite ancient. Don't just pay attention to the miserable experience of this guy named Satyr. Think about the issue of time, okay? What does this have to do with me? Long Shirua suddenly looked at Fire Cloud Evil God seriously and asked. Fire Cloud Evil God opened his mouth and couldn't say anything. What does this have to do with Kelowna? Long Shirua asked again seriously. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head subconsciously. No, these were all transcendents other than Kelowna. They were just dogs biting each other until blood was shed and bones were found. It really had nothing to do with Kelowna. Then why did you ask? Fire Cloud Evil God wanted to fight again. Why didn't anyone come to challenge him? In fact, many people had the same doubts as Fire Cloud Evil God, but obviously, only Lamias could answer this question. However, the new chief of the Black Order didn't seem to want to explain at all. When Satyr stopped talking, but he was still paralyzed by the Phantom Demon Emperor Fist, Lamias directly lifted Satyr up and threw him to the Black Order. Look after him. In a split second, several black-robed nuns from the Black Order immediately put Satyr under surveillance. At this time, a dark-skinned old man on another stand suddenly stood up and said angrily, "He is a summoned demon. What do you want to do?" Satyr did not care about the demons that had fallen to the ground. What he cared about was the fact that he had sacrificed hundreds of lives in order to summon a powerful demon during the demon summoning ritual. There were even a few of his own blood descendants among them. The price was high, but it was worth it. At the very least, Satyr, who was finally summoned, helped him accomplish many things under the constraints of the demon summoning contract. He even directly defeated many opponents and directly blended into one of the representatives of the Demon Earth continent who went to the summit meeting. The demon Satyr was his greatest support. How could he allow his summoned demon to be taken away by someone else? "I'm acquainted with him, so I'm inviting him back as a guest," Lamias replied directly. "I'll return it to you when I'm done with it." Damn it. The dark-skinned old man was unhappy. The deadwood staff in his hand was instantly inserted into the ground of the stand. But at this time, a light arrow was instantly shot out and directly pierced through the old man's staff, and then nailed it into the concrete behind. At this time, Lamias opened her hands, and in her hands, there was a long bow condensed by golden light. This was not a treasure bow, this was just a bow that was materialized by her fighting spirit. Everyone was shocked. Lamias said directly, "Don't say that I'm racist, but if you say one more word, I'll shoot you 7 arrows. I said I'll return it to you when I'm done with it. Be quiet." Instantly, the old wizard's face was extremely ugly. His lips trembled, and he was extremely angry, but more than that, there was fear. In the end, after a few symbolic struggles, the old wizard was pulled down by his companions and sat down. At this time, the audience remembered one thing. Because they were too focused on Satyr's tragic experience, they almost forgot that Lamias had defeated this powerful Saint Seiya, who had returned from the underworld with one punch. Of course, Satyr might not actually be that powerful. However, at the very least, at the scene of the power conference, with the strength that Satyr displayed while wearing the Death Saint robe, he could at least be classified as above average. If no one wants to challenge, then I'll challenge someone. At this time, Lamias released the shining longbow in her hand and said indifferently, I also want to try to be a bully. These words were said for Chu Yang, right? At this time, Song Haoran opened his mouth, feeling that this hot beauty on the stage was really interesting, but suddenly, Princess Chu Yang lightly snorted behind him. Song Haoran suddenly asked curiously, "My princess, how is this woman on the stage compared to you?" Song Haoran had not been practicing martial arts for long, but his progress had surprised Chu Yang more than once. In the end, in addition to his outstanding talent, it was also because he had swallowed Gongsun Wu's soul with the Sun God badge. Through the power of the badge, most of Gongsun Wu's martial arts experience turned into Song Haoran's resources. As a genius who could chase after Gongsun Xiu, Gongsun Wu's martial arts experience was undoubtedly a huge treasure for warriors. But even so, Song Haoran still did not have a good way to judge the strength of the real high-end fighting force. First, his realm was not high enough, and second, Lamia's was not a warrior, so it was even harder to judge. "She's very strong," Princess Chu Yang said indifferently, "but I'm not bad either." "That's it?" Song Haoran opened his mouth. This was not the answer he had expected. Princess Chu Yang said indifferently, "You'll know after you fight." "How?" Song Haoran could not help narrowing his eyes. This time, the princess of the Qin kingdom was really angry. Her eyes were like lightning, staring straight at Song Haoran. In an instant, Song Haoran's qi and blood were surging inside his body, and his head was hit countless times by a hammer. He almost fell to the ground unsteadily. But this time, Princess Chu Yang did not seem to want to punish him lightly like before. The light in her eyes was unceasing, even getting stronger. Song Haoran's knees were slightly bent, and his body was sinking, as if he would kneel on the ground at any time. But just as Song Haoran's knees were about to touch the ground, he suddenly gritted his teeth, and the bones in his body creaked. He straightened up. He straightened his body, and the warrior's true power in his body was surging, and his face was purple and gold. Princess Chu Yang immediately retracted her gaze. She knew what state Song Haoran was in. This was the state of a cultivation technique breakthrough. To be able to break through like this? What kind of amazing luck is this? Princess Chu Yang could not help but open her mouth slightly. She knew that Song Haoran's talent was amazing, but she did not expect his luck to be even more amazing. So amazing that just a casual lesson from her could become an opportunity for him to break through. Princess Chu Yang's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of coldness. Song Haoran, who was currently in a state of breakthrough, just a light touch could easily cause him to go berserk. If it was light, his meridians would be broken, and if it was heavy, he might even lose his life. Princess Chu Yang even slowly extended a finger. But very quickly, she retracted this finger and sighed softly. Great Qin has long disappeared, and now the world. Even if you are the demon star of chaos, what does it have to do with me? Forget it, let this consort see to what extent you can grow to. As she spoke, Princess Chu Yang pointed again. This time, it was not to take Song Haoran's life, but to point directly between his eyebrows. I have a method that is 100 times better than the sky-reaching floating diagram. Listen well. The people outside did not pay attention to what was happening in the corner of the stands. Almost all of their gazes were focused on Lamia's. Challenge her? Yes, but this seemed to be a difficult bone to chew. If there was no other way, they could consider it. But there were still soft persimmons with beads. Unless it was absolutely necessary, there was no need to lose them to Lamia's. You're not challenging me? At this time, Lamia's said indifferently, since I'm on the stage, I'll challenge someone else. Damn it, the new chief of the Black Order only had one bead in her hand. And it was sent to her by Fire Cloud, evil god, at the beginning of the battle. The Black Order did not participate in the battle for the beads at all. I only want 3 beads. Lamia's chuckled and extended 3 fingers, but I only have 1 bead now. Whoever gives me 2 beads will be good friends. Everyone was silent. Then, Lamia slowly extended her finger at this time, as if she already had a target to challenge. But at this time, Lamia's finger pointed at a handsome blond man, and it was a white man at first glance. No, it was not Lamia's who pointed at him, but this white man who appeared in front of Lamia's finger. No one knew when he appeared on the stage. "I'm Wolfgang, from the Unata sect." The white man smiled and said, "I'd like to have dinner with Miss tonight." Lamia's immediately narrowed her eyes. Unata sect's disciple. Unata sect again? If I remember correctly, who is the sect master of Huanjin sect? This Unata sect actually has a foreign disciple? Those who reacted more actively were the representatives of the major Taoist sects in the Taoist Association. Gong Fanxing, who went on the stage last time, was already shocking, but they didn't expect that she would be defeated by Chu Yang. But the representatives of the Taoist Association still didn't know who Chu Yang was. They only vaguely knew that she seemed to be one of Secretary Song's people. But since this woman was under the Taoist Association's name, and President Baijie didn't say anything, they could only swallow their doubts and ask later. In any case, Chu Yang had fought for the association and had even obtained the bead, so he was definitely one of them. As for why Chu Yang was a warrior, it was not a problem at all. Have you ever heard of entering Taoism through martial arts? Hey, why isn't Yang Taizi here? You all don't take him to play, how can he sit here? Ask him in the group. Senior Yang Taizi directly turned off his phone. It would be strange if he could answer these gossipy guys. He had his own difficulties but couldn't say it out. He couldn't cry in the group, saying that he was forced by a group of awesome guys to help him strengthen the reputation of the Unata sect, so that they could send him to heaven or something like that. On the martial arts stage. You're good-looking, with a good appearance. Lamia said with great interest. I don't refuse to eat with good-looking people, but my appearance fee is very expensive. Only good-looking? Wolfgang chuckled. You only see my appearance? No, you should see the interesting soul under my appearance. You want this bead of mine? Lamia's took out the bead, tossing it in her hand. Wolfgang shook his head, his eyes blazing. I'm not interested in this kind of thing, but I'm interested in you. Excellent women can always make me excited, and my inspiration is like a fountain. Are you going to spray water on me? Lamia's face suddenly darkened. Temperamental. Wolfgang just smiled. He disappeared. He appeared. Somehow, he even appeared in front of Lamia's with a bunch of roses in his hands. While showing off the flowers, he also showed off the gemstone rings on his 10 fingers. Lamia's frowned and retreated. In a flash, she was already 10 meters away from Zhang Tai. Wolfgang approached with the flowers again, and he began to recite the poem, Midsummer Night's Dream. He disappeared again, but his voice didn't stop, and he appeared in front of Lamia's again with the flowers in his hand. Midsummer Night's Dream continued to recite. But Lamia's had goosebumps all over her body, and instinctively kicked to the side, just like when she kicked Father Stella. But Wolfgang easily blocked it with his hand, and he hadn't finished reciting his Midsummer Night's Dream. F***ck. Lamia's fighting spirit, which she had cultivated for many years, suddenly broke out. Lamia's blocked calf exerted force for the second time. Wolfgang was stunned, but his body had already moved horizontally under the terrible impact. The roses had already been destroyed by the impact, leaving only a bare flower path. Wolfgang looked at the arm that he blocked at this time. The sleeve on his arm had already exploded, and it was very painful. He was indeed a detached person, but he was actually not good at fighting. He was a person who walked out of the world to pursue music theory, and what he was best at was naturally playing. How I want to play a song for you. He shook his hands nervously. No, I want to play for you now. As he spoke, his 10 fingers with gemstone rings were held flat in the air. With the first flick of his fingers, a crisp and soft sound instantly rang in everyone's ears. C Major, Symphony No. 41, known as the movement of Jupiter by later generations. This guy, could it be? The red-haired Riaz suddenly frowned. You know him? Mr. Poulin suddenly asked curiously. Riaz said indifferently, I don't know him, but there is information about this guy in the secret society. I heard that he is a human-shaped teddy bear who seeks love everywhere, but until now, he has been alone and has not found his true love. Mr. Poulin couldn't help but open his mouth. After a while, he sighed. Oh, so sad. But Riaz knew, and she knew it from the secret society's information. Based on Riaz's surprised tone, could it be that Wolfgang, like Riaz, came from, in front of the screen? Lucifer, who was drinking salt soda, spat it out. Why is this guy still here, acquaintance? Skaha, who was sitting quietly next to him, couldn't help but frown. Lucifer sneered. Acquaintance? He is just a musician who wants to please me, but his performance is really good. But a detached person organization? Lucifer couldn't help but ponder and say nothing. She couldn't be in this sealed state all the time. Not only was she sealed as a little girl, but she was also shackled by Raphael. Outside the city of abstinence, she couldn't even lie, let alone do bad things. She didn't know if the detached person organization had a way to free her from this predicament. C major, Symphony No. 41. Boss Luo couldn't help but take a few more glances. Is it the real person? Miss Maid thought for a while and said, It should be. Boss Luo smiled faintly. It's a pleasure to listen to the real person's performance. Miss Maid nodded slightly. In the back seat, Momo's eyes moved left and right, looking at the senior and Miss Maid. What the hell is the senior talking about? What symphony? Senior, I've only heard a song called Prelude of the Dagger Society. And it was when I was eating instant noodles on the train while watching The Great Sage Gets Married? Great. Chapter 2019. His 10 fingers played in the air, impressively. It was a sound that could only be produced by an entire symphony orchestra. Wolfgang had a smile on his face and closed his eyes, as if all his spirit and mind had been immersed in this beautiful movement. When the oboe-like sound echoed in the hall, everything in front of them underwent an astonishing change. Like a dream, what intersected between reality and illusion was a huge, luxurious, bright palace banquet hall with people coming and going. The huge martial arts arena had completely become the dance floor of the banquet. They, the transcendents in the stands, had directly walked into the palace of several centuries ago. They wore luxurious clothes and shuttled back and forth in the crowd. They had lost their sense of direction. There was no trace of Wolfgang anymore, only the majestic C major, 41st Symphony, played in this huge and gorgeous palace banquet. What is this? The stands. No, the stands no longer existed. This was the edge of the banquet's dance floor. There were people coming and going, but they didn't know whether it was real or fake. Zhong Luoyue lowered her head and looked at her palms, and the clothes on her body. A pale yellow basil skirt. You look. The little vampire girl was surprised at this time, but then she quickly found that she seemed to be the same. She couldn't help but be puzzled. Me too. When did I wear a black skirt? This vampire girl had snow-white hair. Now that she had changed into a black skirt, she looked more like a delicate porcelain doll. Are we under an illusion? Zhong Luoyue frowned at this time. But at this time, she found that except for Elizabeth, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master and the Ice Tower Master had disappeared. When Zhong Luoyue realized this, her consciousness suddenly became blurry. She couldn't even stand steadily. She subconsciously held her forehead. She forced herself to open her eyes and look at Elizabeth. What she saw was Elizabeth's anxious look. She began to forget who she was in the end. She began to remember who she was. She was a nobleman's daughter, at the age of budding, invited to this palace banquet, a noble girl born in a prominent family. The atmosphere is not bad, let's dance. Boss Luo smiled and said softly in front of the well-dressed servant girl. Fire Cloud Evil God looked at the wig on his head. It was said that in this era, wearing a wig was a symbol of status. However, the fact that a man actually wore white stockings made him look quite ridiculous. He tugged at the socks on his thighs awkwardly and furrowed his brows again. This texture is completely real, and so is everything here. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and casually pressed on a pillar. Then, with a slight squeeze, the pillar was instantly crushed into pieces. The gravel in his palm was finally crushed into dust. The fire cloud evil god subconsciously looked at Kelowna Shinryu beside him. Long Shirua was also wearing a silver-white dress. Probably because of the style of the dress, her figure was surprisingly good. What's this guy's name again? Long Shirua touched the dress on her body. It doesn't seem simple. If it were a Taoist technique, it would be very difficult to achieve this level. The fire cloud evil god was silent. He was a warrior with great power in his every move. But this kind of thing was completely beyond his knowledge. To put it simply, he was a layman. The fire cloud evil god could push his destructive power to the extreme, but if you asked him to create something, he could only squeeze some mud out of it. May I? In front of Princess Lamia's, a handsome young man appeared out of nowhere. With a sunny smile and elegant movements, he seemed to be the brightest star in this birthday banquet of Her Royal Highness. That's right, today was the first birthday banquet of Princess Lamia's after she became an adult, and it was the biggest banquet of the year in the kingdom. Princess Lamia's smiled faintly at this moment, slowly stretching out her hand. The handsome young man knelt on one knee in front of the princess, as if he was holding a piece of art. He gently held the princess's hand and lowered his head to kiss the back of the princess's hand. The movement began to move and light notes began to flow. The people on the dance floor, men and women, were embracing each other in picturesque disorder. Colorful stars filled the sky above their heads, as if they had walked into a world of fairy tales. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles of happiness and blessings. In the center of the dance floor, there was an empty space. The handsome young man and the most beautiful princess of the kingdom strolled over under everyone's gaze. In the midst of the dance steps, the young man said with deep affection, "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, my princess." "Really?" Princess Lamia's raised her head, her eyes hazy. "Yes, like an angel," the young man said softly, and then lowered his head, wanting to touch the soft lips of the beautiful princess. "I am thinking about something," the princess of the kingdom suddenly said. The young man had to stop and asked in surprise, "What are you thinking about?" Princess Lamia said seriously, "Although I have been single for a long time, I shouldn't find a man so casually." The young man suddenly chuckled. "Princess Lamia said expressionlessly, "You better back off before I think about where to hit you." The young man chuckled again. The third movement began, and the atmosphere of the banquet was stirred up again. Lamia snorted coldly, "If you want to hit me, then hit me properly. Don't do this nonsense. You don't think you can do whatever you want just because of this, do you? At least the effect is good, isn't it?" the young man said casually. But the movement intensified, and in an instant it reached the fourth movement. Lamia's frowned, and her fighting spirit erupted like a volcano. The dance floor in the banquet hall began to shake violently. The young man shook his head lightly, but at this moment, a cold voice covered all the sounds of the movement. "What kind of rubbish is this? I am a native of Kelowna and I can't stand this style." It was the voice of Shinryu Kelowna. The young man frowned slightly. "You got it wrong. Change it." Shinryu Kelowna's voice sounded again. The entire banquet hall began to crumble. All the movements came to a sudden halt, as if they were stuck in a tape. At the same time, different voices began to sound in different corners of the banquet hall. "That's it? This is far inferior to our Radiance Tower Master's true domain. What kind of rubbish is this?" A scorching aura as hot as the sun broke through the dome of the banquet hall. "Damn it, Scarlet Flame old man, you are acting cool again. What are you acting cool for?" There are so many women with big butts here, I haven't touched enough. Stella, go to hell. The moment he spoke, the banquet hall began to crumble even faster. There is no problem with the challenge, but it is limited to the martial arts stage. This is beyond the scope of the martial arts stage. It is a foul. This was the voice of Fire Cloud, evil god. A sword energy broke through the air, and the broken banquet hall was instantly split into two. Samadhi. I can't stand such a dispirited atmosphere. Although I am a pretty girl, I don't recite Buddhist scriptures. Ha ha. Bang. My heart is clear, my sword heart is bright. Break. Bang. Riaz, where are you looking? Why are you still looking? Bang. Senior, the buffet here is not bad. And where is Senior? The young celestial master of Mount Longhu was holding a bowl of food, squinting his eyes as he enjoyed it. When the crumbling arrived, he waved his hand casually, causing the crumbling to bypass him and continue eating. Boring. Princess Chu Yang continued to meditate. Zhuifeng, watch Purple Star. Zhuifeng, wake up. Oh, big brother? Huh, where is this? Emo Xiaofei shook his head and immediately closed his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes again, the surroundings crumbled. The handsome young man shook his head at this time and sighed. It seems that no one knows how to appreciate it. Lamia sneered and waved her hand across the air. The entire banquet hall disappeared instantly like a fleeting cloud. The martial arts arena returned. Wolfgang's 10 fingers had stopped moving. On the 8 grandstands, many transcendents were hugging their companions. Men, women, women, old men, 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 old men. They woke up in an instant. Vomit. Wolfgang shook his head again, as if it was a pity. He whispered in a low voice, after all, we can't go too far in the subworld. Otherwise, we will be targeted by the administrator. But at this time, a fist containing a majestic fighting spirit had appeared in front of Wolfgang. He looked solemn and immediately flicked his finger. An invisible shield wall was formed, blocking in front of the fist. However, the fighting spirit was too powerful. The shield wall was instantly shattered, and the momentum didn't diminish. Wolfgang showed a surprised look. He flicked his finger, and shield walls were formed one after another out of thin air. However, his fists continued to crumble one after another, destroying everything in their path. Wolfgang's frown deepened. While he was still in shock, the fist had already arrived. He raised his hands in a rather flustered manner and crossed his arms to block the fist. However, his body was crazily pushed by the force. He swept the stone slab of the martial arts arena and moved back crazily. Finally, he fell out of the martial arts arena and fell outside. Lamia's fist was still emitting a blazing aura, twisting the air. She withdrew her fist, glanced at Wolfgang who fell out of the arena, and said indifferently, "It's not wrong for a man to be versatile, but you want to have sex with me because your fist is not hard enough. Do you think you are Mr. Clown a few days ago?" Humph *2. 2 soft hums suddenly sounded in Lamia's ears. She didn't know why there were 2 hums, but one of them left a deep impression on her. Lamia's face slightly changed in an instant. "I don't mean anything. It's just an example. Don't worry." Seeing that there were no more sounds, Lamia secretly let out a sigh of relief. Miss Maid probably just gave a warning casually. But apart from the terrifying servant girl, where did the other cold snort come from? She was also a woman. The tone of the 2 humps was exactly the same. In other words, in addition to the horrible servant girl, there was another one? Lamia suddenly forcibly stopped her own guess. She felt that if she knew too much, but she said it in a low voice, and no one heard it. Seeing that there was really no follow-up, Lamia slowly sighed, but found that Wolfgang had quietly disappeared at this time. This guy, Lamia couldn't help but frown. Subconsciously, she always felt that this mysterious guy didn't use his full strength at all, as if he was just playing. In the passage under the spectator's stand, Wolfgang was humming something. He was now leaning against the wall with some manuscript papers and pencils in his hands. He was writing something, and it seemed that he had an inspiration. Wolfgang. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded in the darkness. Wolfgang didn't raise his head. I have an inspiration. Don't disturb me. I sent a signal before, but you didn't come. It's useless to come now. I don't have time to care about you. We came here with the task of Archimedes. The voice continued. That's your throne, and it has nothing to do with me. Wolfgang said indifferently, what task you have, it has nothing to do with me. But based on the principle of helping each other, when I was in trouble, you chose not to come. When you were in trouble, I could choose not to help you. We were in the city of abstinence. The voice snorted coldly. This subworld is not as simple as you think. Wolfgang didn't seem to hear it. He raised his head, as if he was thinking about something. Soon, he lowered his head and quickly wrote something on the manuscript. The figure in the darkness quietly disappeared. Only then did Wolfgang stop writing. He thoughtfully looked into the darkness and muttered, looks like he really did lose one. Otherwise, with such an arrogant personality, he wouldn't look for me. Sure enough, there's a big problem with this subworld. There was indeed a big problem. From when he was imprisoned by Mr. Song, to when he met Farrell, and then after watching the challenges one by one, he finally found the problem. The upper limit of this subworld is too high. Taking advantage of the fact that no one came to challenge her, Lamias directly drew 2 opponents. After winning easily, she took the 3 beads and left the arena. Now, the number of beads in the hands of the middle and low-level transcendent groups was decreasing. Naturally, the number of people who could choose to fight for the beads was decreasing. After more than an hour of the challenge, the beads had basically flowed into the hands of the powerful transcendent group. From morning to afternoon, more than half a day had passed. Now, only the groups that could be said to be the gold were left. Kelowna was still the region that obtained the most bead. The division of the Transcendent Association's territory and voice in the future could be seen at this time. Next, it would be the battle for the Transcendents who had obtained the right to speak and wanted to expand their voice. Lady Lamias, do we really only want 3 beads? Other than me, I have no objections if any of you can bring back 1 more bead. Sorry, we are useless. In North America, it's fine as long as you have the right to speak. After all, there is only one dark congregation, right? Lamias chuckled and said, it's fine as long as we have the territory. That's true, Stella. Come down and accept your death. Suddenly, in the conference hall that had been silent for a long time, a furious voice suddenly sounded. A flaming bridge instantly appeared in the stands and extended all the way to the arena. The person walking on the flaming bridge was the Scarlet Blaze Tower's master. Everyone could not help but look at the strongest talker, Father Stella. In this battle, the Kelowna authority had no reason to stop the fight or pull the 2 apart. Father Stella directly snorted at this time, took his sacred sword of physics and jumped directly into the arena. Scarlet Blaze Tortoise, do you dare to bet with me on my wife? If you lose, give me your wife. Where the hell did you get your wife from? The Scarlet Blaze Tower's master walked down the flaming bridge, his eyes spitting out scarlet flames. Father Stella instantly snorted and said, Who said I don't? With that, Father Stella directly tore open his lapel, only to see the image of a woman with a sweet smile printed on the thin undershirt. Look. Father Stella pointed at the big picture on his clothes and sneered. My wife. 10 yuan. You motherf ***cur. In the stands, Sister Lavinia had fainted from anger.